Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, October 13th, 2022, Kent County Public School Board of Education meeting. This is the open session. The time is 5:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the administration is recommending the approval of the agenda that has been presented for tonight. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Dr. Costa has the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sullivan. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to move to closed session. The Kent County Public Schools Board of Education members, this board, Dr. Karen Couch, the superintendent, Mr. Dan Hushin, supervisor of human resources, Adam Constas, legal counsel, and Gail Manley, executive assistant to the superintendent, will move to closed session under General Provisions Article 3-305B, Section 1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, as well as any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and Section 7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. Do we have a motion to move into closed session?
I'll make a motion to move into closed session.
We have a motion by Ms. Sullivan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. McGee. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. We will move into closed session and be back returning into open session at approximately 6:30 p.m. Good evening and welcome to the second open session portion of this meeting. Today is October 13th, the time is 6:30, and this is the Kent County Public Schools Board of Education meeting. The first item on the agenda is to report on closed session. Excuse me. Kent County Public Schools Board of Education members, this board, Dr. Karen Couch, the superintendent, Mr. Dan Hutchins, supervisor of human resources, Adam Constas, legal counsel, and Gail Manley, executive assistant to the superintendent, met in closed session under General Provisions Article 3-305B to discuss Section 1, the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, as well as any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. Also, Section 7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. This session was for information and discussion purposes only. No action was taken. Personnel actions will be voted upon by this board during the superintendent's report. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Wallace, would you lead us? Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the September 12th, 2022 open session meeting. The administration is recommending approval of those minutes. Do we have a motion to do so?
I move that we approve the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 open session meeting.
Mr. Johnson has the motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second by Ms. Sullivan. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is our first public participation session. As Ms. Gale is walking up, just want to speak to the rules for public participation. Speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes. Comments about the actions or statements of individual staff members are not appropriate for public comments and should be referred to the superintendent of schools or processed through available channels. If submitting written testimony, speakers are requested to provide a copy to the president. Please remember that this is an opportunity for the community to address their comments to the board. It is not an opportunity for dialogue. If you have questions that need an answer, please contact the superintendent or write a letter to the Board of Education and a response will be sent back to you. The time is for 3 minutes, and when we get down to the last 30 seconds, I will just communicate that we're down to the last 30 seconds, and your time will be over at 3 minutes. The first public participant I have is Chris Yanikis.
How's it going? I never want to assume that these things have been brought to the board's attention before, but there was some talk on some social media, and I just wanted to bring a few things to light, make sure that the board knows about it. My name is Chris Yanikis. I'm a 98 graduate of Kent County High School. My oldest son graduated 2019, and God willing, my daughter will be graduating in 2031. I'm here to voice some thoughts brought up by some county parents and coaches via social media. The question posed was what was needed to get Kent County High School sports on the right track, and subsequent responses were, I believe, all meant to be a sounding board for finding ways to improve athletics here in Kent County. I'm just going to address the ones that are relevant to Kent County Public School. One was school administration support. The consensus was hit or miss. From the outside, though, it appears that athletics is not a priority for our school. Not only from a funding standpoint, such as shortage of uniforms, the dryer still isn't hooked up after 2 years, but recruitment and support is not there. It's not a faculty and staff job to push students into the sports or cheer them on, but it does make a huge difference. There are many who would prosper and thrive in the family environment of sports if only they were received there, if they were brought into it. I know that for a fact. I think the biggest concern for a lot of us coaches, I know, and probably parents, is the late bus. This is a huge burden on recruitment and coaches themselves. There are times I've waited an hour for students to be picked up, and on many occasions, I've had to secure athletes a ride from other athletes or parents to get them home. I know for a fact that 3 to 4 of my athletes every year wouldn't be able to wrestle if I didn't find them rides to practice or to events. So that's a big deal there. The other one is grade checks and study hall. I've only been there 6 years, so I don't know how it was done before, but a struggle is grades. Regular official checks sent out to coaches or access to the system for someone like myself who's not in the school system. I don't have access to it, so I can't check my students' grades regularly, depending on the AD or teachers to help me out. The other issue is how to help those athletes improve themselves academically. Sports season study hall or maybe a tutor on deck at the library during
30
practice.
seconds.
I would gladly send my students down. I myself, when I find out they have something to do, I put them in the corner of the practice room and they don't get to participate until whatever their work is done. But I got to know about it. It's the problem. And I'm relying on them to tell me right now when they're behind. Connecting the teachers with the athletes' coaches is a great way to create a unity across the athletic and academics. We both want the students to succeed, and our influence as coaches can go a long way to driving them off the field as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next participant is Frank Rhodes.
Good evening, Dr. Couch and the board, Braden. I want to continue with this gentleman who just spoke. I've been to a lot of sports events, and they could use a late bus. I hear it from a lot of people. More students would be able to stay. But I'm here really about the middle school. They had the first meeting last night, and there's going to be 3 more, and the board's going to decide what they want to do. 10 years ago, or maybe it was 12, they had the same situation when the schools they had to consolidate. And I felt it was sort of like a dog and pony show because I think they knew the answer before they even went to all the schools. It was pretty obvious. So I sort of sense the same situation now. I think that some people on this board have already made their decision, and that's my opinion, so I don't know. There are 4 community meetings, and already you can see a slight tilt towards Wharton. So Chestertown, I'm not saying I'm voting for Chestertown, but Chestertown is the county seat with 29% of Kent County's population. And I think Chestertown deserves a better shot than what is going on with this event. Furthermore, I truly feel that this decision is too important to rush. Therefore, I ask the board to hold off on their vote until the new board comes in. And the reason I say that is that it looks like to me that this was planned to be right before the board was to be voted on. I don't know, whenever you started this a couple years ago, and I understand that, but I think you should wait. It just seems convenient to have this plan before the new board is seated. So that's all I have to say, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, the next portion of the meeting is the superintendent's report. We go right into the tenured teacher recognition.
Right.
Mr. Hushin.
Thank you. Thank you, President Getz, school board members, Dr. Couch. This evening, we're here to recognize eight teachers from our school system who have successfully completed 3 years of satisfactory experience in our school system or have come to us from another school system where they achieved tenure and have worked for us for a year with satisfactory experience. This is an important milestone for our staff as it marks the end of their 3 years of probation. So I would like for all of you to join me tonight in honoring our staff. We do have some staff who are here, but I do want to acknowledge those who are not. And if we can all hold our applause until everyone is called, those who are here, we'll ask you to come up for a few photos, okay? Okay, so from Kent County High School, we have Mrs. Joanna Cohen. We have Mrs. Collins and Mrs. Diane Hogan. From Galena, we have Miss Van Zant. From Rockhold Elementary School, we have Mrs. Brooke Joyner. And from Kent County Middle School, we have Miss Caitlin Wright, Miss Tykia Jones, and Mike Jones. Miss Cohen and Mr. Jones are here in attendance. If you could come up here, and if we can join in and give everyone a round of applause for this honor. And your family is welcome to come up and join you as well, Mr. Jones.
That would have been me for sure.
Bring this party in a little bit. Yeah, hold it out.
I look like a midget.
They absolutely can, or we can sing this one first and then.
All right, sure.
One.
1, 2, 3, everybody look at me and smile.
And then I think we just want to grab one still for the family.
This way. All right, everybody look at me. 1, 2, 3.
Yay.
Yeah, sorry about the board. Thank you and congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is personnel actions. Mr. Hutchin, I see you're at the podium there, so we'll let you go right ahead.
Yes, President Getz, thank you, school board members. Dr. Couch, each month the board receives a report of stated personnel actions. Those actions are discussed in closed session and then voted upon during the open session. The administration seeks approval of those stated personnel actions.
As Mr. Hutchin just mentioned, the administration is recommending approval of the stated personnel actions. Do we have a motion to approve those personnel actions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Ms. Sullivan has the motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second by Ms. McGee. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Hutchin.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Hey, couple of things. Just wanted to let you know that the arrival and dismissal of the Galena students has been increasingly difficult because of the traffic on Highway 313. So, Mr. Wheeler and I are working with the State Highway Department to install signage and flashing lights in the front of Galena. I also contacted Delegate Jacobs, who has been in contact with the state engineer, and also people who work for the State Highway Department. As a matter of fact, he sent me a message today that he'd spoken to several other individuals this week, and he felt certain something was going to happen. So I'll keep you posted, but I just wanted to let you know that we're working on that.
Have they thought of putting in a camera with fines like they have it on Morgan?
Well, I think that's all part of what they're trying to figure out, so.
That seems to work pretty
Yeah.
well.
I know that the town of Galena has been complaining as well, and they talked about putting up a camera of some sort, but I'd like flashing lights to be out there as well. So we're trying to see what all we can do.
It's speeding?
Yeah.
It's speeding.
Our new HR specialist will be coordinating volunteers. As you know, that individual has been approved this evening. So as soon as that individual is on board, I just wanted to let you know that Human Resources is going to be revamping the way in which we process volunteers. We will be processing them with fingerprints, and we will also make sure we're compliant with House Bill 486, which means we have to verify that anyone who's working with students is free of any child sexual abuse or sexual misconduct convictions. So I wanted to let you know that that's going to be in process, so we'll keep you posted about that. As Mr. Rhodes was stating, we had our first listening session for Kent County Middle School last night. Although it was a small turnout, I think those in attendance enjoyed the presentation. I think there was a lot of good information. I will reiterate what we said multiple times during the meeting, that no decisions have been made. And we are out there to try to hear what the public has to say about the project itself. We have other listening sessions that will be scheduled next week, October the 18th at Galena Elementary at 5:30, October the 19th here at the Board of Ed beginning at 6 o'clock. We will live stream that particular meeting, and we will record it and put it on the website so anybody can access it. And then we added a fourth listening session, which will be October the 27th at Kent County Middle School. The student support coaches, as you know, that's part of our LEADS grant, our Maryland LEADS grant. They began their positions last week. We've hired a total of 26 student support coaches, which we are calling our SSCs. For our schools, we have 4 more in process. They've been trained in the math and reading interventions, and they'll be providing targeted assistance to our struggling readers and our struggling learners. We're excited about this innovative approach to supporting our students. It appears that our state superintendent is also very excited about what we're doing, and I'd just like to beg your forgiveness here for a minute, because I'd like to play a little 3-minute snippet that he recorded on a podcast. It's a collaborative, there's a group called the Collaborative for Student Success. They explored education recovery, and they recently aired a podcast on how Maryland is leveraging funds to improve equity and outcomes. State Superintendent Chaudhary was the guest on the podcast, and he was talking about promising initiatives that are going on around the state to improve student outcomes. He highlighted Kent County as one of the promising programs that he thought could be replicated around the state. And so I'd just like to play a little bit of what he had to say.
Are there others like that you are particularly hopeful for Maryland? You know, things like that are happening that, like, we want to shout that from the rooftops.
Yeah, there's several. Some that are starting out with a small pilot that is being scaled, and some they're in the thick of their pilot and early results look good. And some, messy starts, but they're rebounding and readjusting. One of the things that I'm really excited about is our state is investing in literacy, not just in the K-3 spectrum, but all going down to pre-K as well, and making sure that literacy is thought of as a pre-K through 3rd grade experience as a whole. And so one of the things that we have done is we have something called transitional supplemental tutoring dollars that our state is investing through the blueprint, and essentially it's a per pupil bump at the early grades that school systems have, and they are required to essentially do high dosage targeted tutoring for students who are struggling with mathematical and reading concepts and intervene early. And our school systems have embraced that. Baltimore City is definitely taking advantage of that. And then of course they're syncing up that with their Reconnect, Restore, and Reimagine work that you guys have highlighted. But other school systems, for example, we have a school system called Kent County, a small school system, but it is doing high dosage tutoring, leveraging college students and bringing them in and really maximizing the school day where, because people think like, okay, let's do high dosage tutoring, but you need staff for it. You can't just, it's not just take the existing teacher and do high dosage tutoring, because the existing teacher has to be somewhere else when those small group teacher students of 3 to 5 groups of students who are being tutored. So you need a bench of people to pull from. And so what I have really loved about our ability to leverage this moment is schools are opening themselves up to the community and to use the community as a way to help recover students and then accelerate their learning. And I don't mean like the classic volunteer sign up. I actually mean like you are going to partner with your local university. You are going to take college students. You're going to train them on mini lessons on how to deliver high quality, explicit phonics instruction. And they are going to do that with a small group of students versus the traditional just come in and I want you to just read with these students. And so that's where our school systems are. And they're doing exciting designs like this. So Kent County is one. Frederick County is another one.
So that pretty much highlights what one of the initiatives that we're doing with the LEADS grant in terms of the training has already occurred. We've trained them on our Sound Partners program, our Do the Math, and that is what they are doing in the classroom is they're providing that one-on-one targeted assistance so that we can help make sure that our kids are proficient by 3rd grade. So I thought it was neat that our state superintendent was acknowledging one of the things that we were doing well. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about, I know during public comment, there was a comment about late bus, and I did want to let you know that I heard you. And I think that that is something that we need to consider when we build our budget. And look at it more closely. It's not something we have budgeted for this school year. So I think that that would be something that we would have to consider when we build our budget for next school year. But I just wanted to let you know that I did hear you and some good suggestions that we'll take under advisement. And the last thing is just noting that we have our next quarterly meeting scheduled for November the 28th. At that point in time, Dr. Lever would like to do a presentation on at least provide, doesn't mean that the board has to make a decision that night, but he would like to provide us with update on what happened during the listening sessions. He is teaching a class at Virginia Tech on the 28th, which is a Monday. So in order for us to get it on the books, I would like to see if we would like to move that date sometime during that week. That's a Monday night, the 28th, that he cannot do the presentation. He'd like to come here in person. I think we saw what happened when we tried to do it electronically, and it didn't work as well. So he said he could make it on the 29th, the 30th, or the 1st. So you can think about it when we get ready to plan for the next meeting. We can talk about it, but I just wanted to bring that up as changing the date.
The Thursday before.
What's the date?
The first
When's
would be a
Thanksgiving?
Thursday.
It's after Thanksgiving,
This would be after Thanksgiving.
yes. So the 28th is what we had agreed on, but I'd like to consider the 29th, which is a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So
Do we just want to commit to a date now so we can get it out?
I'm fine with any of those dates.
Yeah, I'm okay with either of those dates, either two.
I am too.
Okay, so do you want to just do it on the 29th? Just, okay,
Great.
thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Couch. The next item on the agenda is the Midshore Community Foundation Agreement. I see Mr. DeVillio walking forward.
Good evening, President Getz and board members. At your direction, the administration is launching the Kent County Public Schools Education Foundation Fund, a component fund of the Midshore Community Foundation. Money raised will be used to provide mini grants for teachers and fund field trips for students. A special capital campaign will be launched to help fund renovations to the planetarium at Kent County High School. The agreement presented here for your approval will formalize the establishment of the Kent County Public Schools Education Foundation Fund with Midshore Community Foundation. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, that's...
How many people do we have on the foundation at this point?
Currently, the board is 5 people. I have been speaking with some others who are interested in joining us.
Great.
So the administration's recommending
Can I ask-
approval.
Can I ask a question? I'm looking at the agreement in number 3, and I know that we've talked about this before. Typically, I think when someone comes under the umbrella or joins the Midshore, don't they have to put up some money? And I'm looking at foundation acknowledged receipt of as the initial property of the fund. Is that the Midshore Community Foundation, or is that our foundation?
That's, well, let me back up for a minute. Mr. Consis has reviewed the agreement and approved of the agreement, so I just wanted to let you know that we did run it by council so the agreement is fine. But as far as that particular one,
This appears to be that this is the initial fund or the start.
Right.
That at inception, when this is codified, that this is the property fund.
Correct.
Or the starting amount.
yes.
But you're asking, do members of the
Well, maybe.
foundation need to be,
Well, no, I'm not asking
Okay.
that. What I'm at, so I'll back up to what you said so that I can get clarification on that. So what is are we starting with any money in the bank, any money in the,
No.
okay, so
We're waiting to
okay.
get this approved first
Okay.
before we can actually start collecting money and people can start making donations.
Okay. And we didn't have to do anything to come under the umbrella with Midshore Community Foundation in terms of any seed money or anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. That's all I had.
So administration is recommending approval of the agreement, and then once we approve this, and that's the last piece that we have to get, to officially launch the foundation.
are there any other questions regarding the foundation or this document? Okay. The administration is recommending approval of the Midshore Community Foundation Agreement. Do we have a motion to do so?
That we approve the document establishing the foundation.
Dr. Costa has the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any further comments, questions, concerns?
I just want to make sure, do you know what we're talking about, Braden?
I just asked.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
We have a motion. We have a second. Are there any additional comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yay, finally.
We'll launch it
Lot of
tomorrow.
work.
Launch it tomorrow. Anybody who wants to donate money can start donating money.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Policy CC, Administrative Organizational Plan.
Okay, so this is the first reading of the update to the organizational chart. As you know, we added an assistant coordinator for accountability and implementation position, so that position was added to the organizational chart. This is the first reading. It's for information only.
For just, could you just, for the public record, just maybe talk about how this job title came about and what it's specifically for?
It's to administer the blueprint, Maryland's blueprint. Every, as required by law, every county has to have a blueprint implementation coordinator. I served in that role for last year, just simply because it was getting off the ground. Both myself and Pat Merritt were co-chairing it, and now that there is considerably more work that is in front of the blueprint coordinator, we hired Mr.
Tom Porter.
Tom Porter. I had to think for a second, his name escaped me. I was going to say Thomas Porter. Mr. Porter, who is our blueprint coordinator. So that had to be added onto the organizational chart.
Dr. Couch, it's listing this as an action item.
We presented it last month.
Yeah,
Oh,
so this is an action item for
okay.
this evening.
So I guess I already forgot we presented it
And I
once.
just want to be clear, because I'm trying to follow all the lines. That position responds directly to you, there's no, okay.
Yep.
Okay. And that's the only addition, right?
That's the only
Okay.
addition.
Gotcha.
Okay, the administration is recommending approval of Policy CC, Administrative Organizational Plan. Do we have a motion to do so?
I move that we update Policy CC, the Administrative Organizational Plan.
Mr. Johnson has the motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Sullivan. Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the board negotiations team.
The board has before you the listing of the board negotiations team. You'll note that Mr. Silver would be the chief negotiator. There's listing of all of the other members on the team, and the advisory members would be our legal counsel, Mr. Constas, and Tom Porter. The reason why we listed him as an advisory member is because he has intricate knowledge of the blueprint, and as you know, the career ladder is going to be an important aspect of the negotiations this coming year.
Can I ask a question? So, just for public acknowledgement, all the members of the negotiation team except Mr. Silver are current Kent County Public School employees. Can you explain why Mr. Silver, we're using him? I know the answer, but I'd rather hear it for the record.
Well, Mr. Hushin is new in his role, and so this gives him one more year of working with Mr. Silver as the chief negotiator. We feel fairly certain that after this year, Mr. Hushin will be able to take on that role on his own.
So is like Mr. Silver, like
He's
a contract?
contracted.
We're paying him, okay.
He's
Gotcha.
contracted.
Okay.
How often will they meet?
Just depends upon how many times it takes to come up with an approved contract.
Okay, this is an action item. The administration is recommending approval of the 2022-2023 Board of Education negotiations team. Do we have a motion to approve?
I make the motion. We approve the negotiations team.
Ms. McGee has the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Dr. Costa. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the reports, Kent County Teachers Association.
They're not present this evening.
Okay. Then we go right into board discussion. Mr. Wallace, if you can start us off. Thank you.
Right. So, for Galena Elementary School, kindergarten classes will be taking field trip to Council Farms to learn about farming and agriculture on October 13th. On October 14th, Galena will be having an official ribbon cutting ceremony for their new walking path to the community. The walking path goes around the perimeter of the back playground. On October 18th, Galena's first graders will be participating in a walking field trip to the Galena extension of Kent County Public Library. They will take a short walk through Dogwood Village Park. Parents and teacher conferences will be held on Thursday. For Rock Hall is Stocktober. They're having Stocktober at Rock Hall Elementary School. They are collecting donations for socks for families. Donation bins can be found at Rock Hall Elementary School, Ace Hardware, Fresh Start, Haven Harbor Marina, and Java Rock. And parent-teacher conferences will be taking place on October 20th for all elementary schools. Rock Hall Elementary School is excited that that families are using their new school-based health center with Chop Tank. As of today, they have already seen 12 patients from Rock Hall Elementary School, and enrollment is increasing daily. For Henry Highland Garnett Elementary School, October 14th at 5:30 p.m., they will have a trunk or treat. October 20th will be parent-teacher conferences, and October 28th from 2:30 p.m. will be the fall parade. For Kent County Middle School, October 17th, they will be having ALICE training for all students. The 19th will be Unity Day. Kent County Middle School staff and students will participate in a PBIS event, part 1 of 4 of Battle of the Banner Fall Edition. And the week of October 24th through the 28th will be Red Ribbon Week. Lessons will be done in class and guidance and they will have their first Spirit Week. For the high school, Monday, October 17th through the 20th will be the Kent County High School Homecoming Spirit Week. Monday and Tuesday, October 17th and 18th, KCHS Senior Portraits will be done. October 20th will be a Kent County half day, and Thursday, October 20th will be the Kent County Homecoming Game, Trojans versus Washington at 6:30. Friday, October 21st, Kent County High School will be closed, and the homecoming dance will also be the same day, from 7 to 9. October 31st, KCHS Senior Halloween Dress-Up Day. Friday, November 4th, Salisbury On-Site Admissions Day. And Monday and Tuesday, November 7th and 8th, will be KCHS midterm exams. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Dr. Costa.
I went to the MABE conference. MABE stands for the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, and we're very proud to see Joe Getz, our president, be named president of MABE for this coming year. And he's got quite a challenge because their executive director from the last 10 years is retiring, so he's got to hire a new one, and went to our lawyer's presentation about the career ladder and teachers and other interesting presentations. I always think the most valuable thing about these meetings is just talking to other board members and administrators from around the state and from our own, Kent County. It was very worthwhile. I thought to go to that. I'm going to miss these things when I get off the board.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sullivan.
I also was able to attend what was my first MABE conference. I was only able to go for a day, but luckily it was the day that I got to see Joe Getz sworn in as president, so I want to congratulate him also. And just to echo what Wendy said, it was good to speak to other Board of Ed members from around the state and hear about how things are going and shared issues and hopefully shared successes in the future. I'm attending the walking path opening ceremony in Galena tomorrow. I'm excited about that. I've been had kids at Galena since they started the fundraiser to be able to do the walking path, so it's nice that I'll be able to see that come to fruition. And wanted to mention also that the middle school has started up their PTA. Again, they had their first meeting last month, and the next meeting is November 3rd at 5:30, and I encourage all middle school parents to join and attend. And I was at the listening session last night, and it was good to see the people that were there, but there were very few parents from the community there, which I hope that they will find a way to come to some of the other listening sessions or take advantage of the email address that's on the website so that they can submit their comments about the 3 options or make suggestions about additional options. I've been on the Ed Specs committee for the past year, and I know that we've gone through a number of scenarios. And I also was on the 6-year facility strategic plan committee prior to this, and this has been in the works for 6 or 7 years now. So it is the culmination of all of those resources and members committing to this. So I look forward also to this coming to fruition. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McGee.
Let's start off on the Kent County Middle School. I was at the listening session last night, and I was actually disappointed by the turnout. There were a couple of community members, there were a couple of parents there. I hope that there's a better turnout at the future meetings, and also, if not, people tune into the live stream and archive, and to please send in your comments, because I can only speak for myself, but I did tell a parent last night, I have absolutely not made up my mind. I'm interested in hearing what community members have to say. It's a lot of things to juggle. It's not just about a middle school. It's about what the grade configuration is going to be and what it could mean for the broader Kent County Public Schools in terms of the high school. 10 or however many years ago, when the middle school was being consolidated, meetings were held in each of the communities where there were elementary schools. I was not on the board yet, but in my job as a reporter of the Kent County News, I went to all of those meetings, and every one of those meetings was jam-packed. I mean, the turnout was amazing. So I'm hoping that last night was just a middle-of-the-week anomaly and that we'll have greater turnout. I don't want to take it as a sign that people don't care what we do, because I'm pretty sure people do care what we do, but we need to know what they think about it. That's that. On Coach Unikas's discussion about a late bus and other things to assist our student athletes, when he was in school, and I've been a coach for a long time, we had a late bus. And it made a huge difference. And it's not just athletes. It's kids that may be in the band. It could be kids that are in drama. It could be a kid who's staying after school for a tutoring session and wouldn't be able to do that if they didn't have a way home. A father of a now graduated Kent County High School senior sent me a text message the other day asking me about the late bus and said in his case he would never have been able to play any sport in all 4 of his years if there hadn't been a late bus. So I'm glad to hear that Dr. Couch is thinking about that next year for our budget. One of the things I was thinking about that may help a little bit, because it's going to be a financial issue, plus the fact that we've got a national shortage of bus drivers right now, would be if this would be something that the All Sports Booster Club might consider making a contribution to that. You know, at one point there was a real grandiose plan that we were going to build this field house, which I don't think is ever going to happen. So all the sports teams contribute to the Booster Club in terms of fundraisers, and maybe some small portion of what they bring in every year could be applied to a late bus. I know a couple years ago when one of our neighbor counties decided to go to a pay-for-play, that students had to pay to be able to play athletics, and it obviously was going to be cost prohibitive for some students. Their booster club ponied up the money so that every kid who wanted to play a sport could. I didn't think about this until we approved the Tuesday night meeting for November for Dr. Lever to be here, but I'm thinking if that happens to be a Tuesday night that the county commissioners are meeting, they would not be able to be here. We will know who our new county commissioners are at that point, and I wonder if we should try to reach out to them and have them come and hear firsthand what Dr. Lever has to say.
Our charge is to go and make a presentation to them.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Will Dr. Lever be with you when you do
Yes.
that? Okay, good. I just, like I said, this, whenever the decision is made, sooner or later, it's going to come at the feet of at least 2 new commissioners we know of. The last thing I just wanted to make a couple remarks. I was watching the Chestertown Council meeting about 2 weeks ago, and the Chestertown Police Chief made a presentation about what his department is doing regularly at Garnett Elementary School in terms of driving by, walking through the school, routinely checking every day to make sure windows are securely locked, that the doors are locked, that the fence is shut. And I just wondered if, hopefully, our school resource officer at the middle school and the high school, if that hopefully once a day or so, maybe they're just walking around the campus to make sure that, in addition to any sort of threats that we might perceive coming internally, that nothing gets into our schools. I mean, and it would be a short thing, but I just was actually very impressed with the Chestertown Police Department was doing. And also things like make sure, and Garnett did this before the school year started, that there's no foliage that obscures a window view, or that someone could be hiding or whatever. Just make our school campuses as safe as possible. That's that.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, President Getz. Couple things. Met with some community stakeholders to update them on our school system progress. We had a great discussion. A lot of the discussion came up, was centered around the middle school and thoughts around that and how this is a very high issue of interest because this is the first time we've had to build a new school in 50 years in Kent County. So how this is very, really should be a very exciting time for our community. And so looking forward to really having that discussion and really hearing from the community members and stakeholders about this decision. I too attended MABE. It was a great conference this year. As we said goodbye to some of our colleagues on other boards. One thing that stood out to me is that we are not unique in our situation. A lot of boards are going through similar issues with declining enrollment, similar issues with parental involvement around the state. And at other times, you know, there were stories that board members shared that I could never fathom or imagine would even happen in school systems across the state. And so I'm always thankful that we have a school system that we don't get everything right. And there are sometimes reasons behind that. But at the end of the day, we are still a community that cares for their students and cares for the teachers that are in this district. Because the stories that I heard were stories that I could never imagine could happen here, but never and have not happened here in Kent County. Again, congratulations to President Getz. I know this is very exciting for you, and it's good to know that Kent County is representative because when you go across the state, many people don't even know where Kent County is. You tell them you're from Kent County, they'll say, where is that? And they've been on school board longer than I have. So, you know, it's really, that traction, and as we continue to go through. Attended the NAACP dinner as well. The speaker, the Reverend Cordell Hunter, talked a lot about education, about how to get involved and how to hold local education accountable and make it right. Ms. McGee talking about school safety, and going back to the late bus, you know, I know we did commit money for school safety, and one of the things is that, you know, safety doesn't just come down to physical space. We also have, you know, emotional well-being and making sure every student's needs are met. And if they're not being met, that also creates crisis for that student. Say they want to play this sport and they can't do it, but they have to pick and choose what they're going to do. That causes emotional crises. So really have to look at this, you know, whole picture, that it's just not as, you know, just about, you know, the money, but we also need to provide for that student's whole social emotional well-being, supporting our students where they're at so they have the best. And I guess the question still goes down, why wait for budget season? Why not now? And I guess what would have to be budgeted, you know, in our budget to make it work, and what does that look like? I'm turning it over to you.
You want me to answer that now?
Yeah, I was asking the question to you.
I don't, I think the last time that Mr. Wheeler provided that information to us, when we looked at it at one point in time, when we were having to cut our budget pretty significantly due to declining enrollment, I think he said it was about 70,000 thereabouts. But what I asked him. Yes, for a late bus. And that's not taking every student home to their home. It's just, you know, several stops along the way. You know, like for instance, drop off at Millington, maybe at the school, drop off at Galena, drop off at, you know, so just in the communities themselves, but not taking them door to door, if you will, to their home. What I asked I heard that there was a little bit of buzz about the late bus, so I asked him to go ahead and figure that out for me. He's still working on that. Right now, we're 3 bus drivers short. So that is obviously going to be a consideration with regard to bus drivers. Mr. Wheeler is driving a bus this week. So we're 3.
Does a late bus have to be a full-size bus, or could it be a smaller
Well, I think it just depends upon how many kids. I would imagine that if we have a late bus, we're probably going to be fairly popular. So I think it would have to be a bus. I don't think we could use one of our vans. I don't think that would, because it's only a 15-passenger bus. 15-passenger van. So anyways, it's a consideration with regard to bus drivers and the cost. So I can bring that to you at the next board meeting.
If you could.
Well, I like Tricia's idea of using the boosters for all the sports, but couldn't we also maybe see if we could just have some fundraisers or maybe some of the service organizations?
Or the foundation?
The foundation would be another thing to look at in terms of taking donations. I mean, that would be something to consider as well.
Well, I'm curious also, because we've only talked about having a late bus to support the high school kids, and we do have an athletic program now at the middle school and some after-school clubs there as well. So trying to incorporate those students in whatever the late bus route is would be something additional maybe that we hadn't talked about before.
Okay.
I had one more
please.
thing, I'm sorry. And just going back to school safety, where are we? I know Mr. Wallace brought this up, and I've been big on safety, weather's changing. How have our schools conducted their emergency weather drills yet to ensure, just think about what happened in Florida. We want to make sure our schools are all prepared for, so do we know?
There was an earthquake in Maryland.
And there was an
last week.
earthquake the other day, last night. So again, these are things that are happening, and for the reasons they're happening, I just think make sure we're on and making sure that the signage is in every classroom, because God forbid something happens, and we're not immune to anything at this day and age. So again, an earthquake happened last night, so just making sure we are up to speed. I don't know who's going to answer that one, but.
Well, I can tell you that the month of October is the month that we're training the students on ALICE. That was what it was decided upon. And then working with the local law enforcement to do drills in November. And we've sent notices home to the parents about the fact that, you probably already got yours, in terms of that the training was starting this month with the students. So I think we're going about it. We had follow-up training for the teachers, and then we're going to have follow-up training for the substitute teachers and some of our new teachers that were recently hired. So we're just, we're working through it, making sure that we cover all of our bases. I know that Mr. DeVillio had the pamphlets printed as well, and those were delivered to all of the schools, as well as posters that we have for the classrooms as well. So that's what I can speak to right now.
Good. So just a few comments. Just appreciate your comments about MABE. Mr. Johnson, you mentioned it. For me, it was really about having a seat at the table for a small county in the far right corner of the state with some of our colleagues from across the state and having a little bit more of a voice and being engaged with all the issues. So, but I appreciate the comments. That was very kind of you guys. Just want to thank Coach Yanikis for coming in to talk about that. We've been talking about late bus for a while, and it's been ongoing. And I think not the last consolidation, but the first consolidation, at least in my time here as a parent, we've been talking about it, and there's always been cuts. So, whatever we can do to look at that, I think would be great. Whether it's, combinations of, foundation, whatever it looks like, that'd be really great. And also, if I recall, this Friday and Saturday, as a father and part of the PTSA at the high school, I believe it's the beautification project this Friday and Saturday. So for anyone that has a green thumb, you don't necessarily have to be a PTA member, but if you have some time, I'm just going to tell you, Friday I can't make it because I'm going to Snow Hill to watch my son play, but I apologize for that. But I think if you have a green thumb and you want to come out Friday afternoon and Saturday, I know many hands would be much appreciated, so that's a good thing to do. And if you have a child that's going to be at the high school, just get comfortable with it. So, and just also to staff and teachers, administration, parents, students, things are humming. Social media is abuzz with all the activities, whether it's from FFA to Feed the Farmer to the sports and to senior nights and all the tiers and everything that I know we see as parents with our kids who we've known since they were tiny, especially the one at the end of the table there. He's grown into a fine young man, and it's just really amazing to see this kind of continue. So I would just, thank everyone for their inputs and what they're doing. We can't do it without being a village. So thank you to all for that. And I would be remiss, Adam, thank you for being part of the panel this past weekend at MABE that I moderated. So it was nice to have you there in a different context. So it was nice to see you and go from there. So thank you. Okay, we're moving into education services. I see Ms. Williams walking forward. The next topic is September 30th enrollment count.
Good evening, President Getz, board members, Dr. Couch. Just coming to you annually with our September enrollment. Again, just a few data points that we looked at. Every year we tend to look at where our enrollment would be if we just were to roll numbers up without doing anything. And so we knew that we would be a fairly stable, static in terms of numbers just rolling up. I'm going to leave this slide up for a second because it's very busy and it'll give you a chance to digest this. You can see that for this year we are including our pre-K students in the enrollment count. And I won't get too deep into this, but I'll just mention that for the first time we are able to receive some type of funding for pre-Kers. Now that's going to be on a sliding scale, so based on family income and family size, students, pre-Kers will be either reclassified as a tier 1, 2, or 3. So we would get full funding for tier 1 students, partial funding for tier 2 students, and we wouldn't get any funding for tier 3 students. However, historically in Kent County, we've taken all of our pre-Kers without charging parents anyway. So we would only actually benefit from this situation. Now, our 3-year-old students would, if they qualify for tier 1 status, we would be getting funding for them as well. But tier 2 and 3, they're not eligible for.
Can you just explain, because I attended because it was really interesting to see where we were up with our pre-K. Could you just explain more about the tier and where that kind of started, if you have that context,
Well, Dr. Couch may have a better idea of where that started. She says she does.
Yeah, it's associated with the blueprint. And so because pre-K is a priority of the blueprint, now this will be the first year this coming year, this count will inform next year's budget, but we will be able to count pre-K students. We were receiving funding up to 50% last year and this year, but we will get full funding for those that are at 300% of the poverty level, and then there'll be a sliding scale. So we only receive 50% of those low-income students. Now we'll receive full funding for those low-income students. So it will benefit us. We'll see a little bit of an increase. I think it will help us with regard to some of the loss of students that we have seen. But to what degree it's going to help us, it's to be determined.
Do we only have 3 3-year-olds?
Currently, yes.
3 3-year-olds?
Yes,
And we have
currently.
a full-time teacher?
We have that's the special education students, yes. I think right now we have 3, I think you said there might be 5 coming.
We currently have 3, we're evaluating 2 more for the program. It is a grant-funded position, and program that can serve up to 10 children. However, However, these children are our children with our most significant disabilities, to increase their skills and their skill set, basically, so that they're able to be part of a regular early childhood program, which is our gen ed pre-K program, when they turn to pre-K 4 versus having to go to a self-contained setting.
And that's only in one school currently, is that
Yes.
correct?
Rock Hall.
Okay.
Currently only in Rock Hall Elementary School. However, we have students from all over the county. So
Gotcha.
it's children who are
It's
already
housed.
identified prior to the age of 3 or at the age of 3 as needing intensive services.
And we expect to expand the program next year, is that?
Yes, under
Okay.
blueprint, we do expect to expand for children past those with significant disabilities, but this year it is a grant funded.
Thank you.
What was it in the past? Was it grant funded?
It's always been grant
Okay.
funded.
Has it always been for students with challenges?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Okay, so if you take a look at the bottom, you can see where we would be, our increase would be up by 47 students. We know, again, take away the sliding scale, but we would get funding definitely for 41 of those 47. There are a few non-public students that you see in that count, and we do have one student, we do have a student repeating in terms of pre-K, and so we won't get funded for that student because it's a repeat, so. Okay. A couple other data points that we typically look at are, we've thought over the years that including all students in pre-K would help us retain students, and I think that we've seen over the years that is the case. So 95% of our pre-Kers are returning. We do have 28 students that were not enrolled in our pre-K that did enroll in our kindergarten classes this school year. So where did those 4 students, where are they? Where did they exit to? 1 to homeschooling, and 3 exited to another Maryland public school system. Again, I'm not going to read all of these, but I'll leave it up so that you can scroll through it. But we had, every summer, we track our exiting students and our new enrolling students. So we had 115 new students enroll over the summer, and you'll see on my next slide that we had 100 that exited over the summer. So it's very, it's almost a wash.
We have high mobility. In other words, lots of people moving out, lots of families moving in. So typically, it pretty much evens out, but
Yes.
we have high mobility in this school system.
The 4 from foreign school, does that include the 2 exchange students at the high
Yes.
school?
Mhm.
Okay.
Where are they from?
They're both from France, and they're both playing sports.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. And then again, you can see where the 100 students exiting, where they exited to. And again, Ms. McGee, you can see the 2 exited to foreign school. Those were our 2 exchange students from last school year.
For the 5 whereabouts unknown, that's just we don't know what school they've gone to, but that
Well,
they unenrolled, or?
No, because.
We just don't know.
What happens, and that's a good question. So it's not that we don't know what school, and if they have enrolled in another school in Maryland, we would know that.
You send a transcript, okay.
But typically for the 9:30 count, if we have a student that has not attended school at all, then we exit them out with a code of W50, which means whereabouts unknown, or that they're not engaging in school. And so we take them out for the count, but that doesn't mean that we don't stop trying to figure out where they are.
We just don't know at this time.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in some cases, we do know where they are, and it's a matter of getting parents to make their child come to school.
Wow, okay.
So again, it's safe to say, just as many students that are leaving, safe to say we're bringing that same number at times, if not more. That would.
And this has been the trend. It's been pretty close over the years. I always bring to you our homeless data, and again, this number will fluctuate over the course of the year. You can see that actually our trend is actually moving down, believe it or not, in terms of families and in students experiencing homelessness. At the end of last school year, we had 44 families, which totaled 60 students. And again, you can see in some of these cases, it's a matter that the affidavit or the proof of residence just has not come in yet, and we're still working on that. But this is our current number.
Are you historically seeing that it's the same families, or that we are seeing other families who are in such new poverty?
No, I'm seeing that it's many of the same families that are doubled up. We don't see, we very rarely see a situation where a family is in a situation where they're living in a hotel or a campsite. It's almost all of these families are doubled up with
Relative, yeah,
relatives.
so I was going to say that your definition of homeless isn't necessarily.
Their own home.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, yeah.
And what we're actually working on this year, which may end up, you may end up seeing these numbers go down again by next year, is, you know, some of these families have been considered or the status of homeless for many, many years. And the case is really that it's shared housing. And so if they have been, we're working through this list to say, we're not going to take away any of your benefits that you may get from this status. However, we do need to clean it up and say, really, you are getting mail at this address. You're really established there. You've been there for many years, and it's really considered shared housing. So that's, I guess, the silver lining. Most of these students are just doubled up.
Not incentive, but what benefit, do we give those caregivers that are in this, this space? I know we have, do we do that? Do we try to support, how do we support them? With, maybe it could be as simple as whatever it could be. I don't know. But how do we support them to get them to a place where they're not in shared housing anymore, or get them in a place where they can conduct and making sure that they get the resources that they need to provide,
We meet quarterly. It's a group that we call actually a homeless collaboration committee, and it's several agencies in the county. And we, including I know that we have a shelter that's open just part of the year, but, meeting with those groups and discussing, really at this point, a lot of times, you've got that confidentiality, and we know the families that we're talking about. And if they are school families, we do talk about some resources that we can help provide. And I will say, we have, like, for example, our Elks and, our food pantry, our backpack program, they are so generous to us in terms of providing school supplies, toiletries, food for the weekend, dinner. So I feel like our community really does step up for these families.
Yeah, I was just more so that it's great to hear that, and I was more wondering what role does our community school coordinators play in this work as well. We are community schools, and so
There's two of them, yeah.
Two of them right now. I'm just curious of what the role they play in maybe helping support this as they go through.
Well, I'm sure our social workers are involved in that too. I think just positioning the parents to access available resources is what our staff does on a regular basis.
And our last data point, and I bring this up just because it was a big topic for us this summer, looking at our out-of-zone requests. We did have 58 applications. We did approve 55. 3 were denied. We did have, we talked about putting students on a wait list in the end of July, early August. Of that, the students on the wait list, 6 did decide to pull their applications out and actually return to their home school, so.
Are
those
most of the people applying staff who want their kids to go to the same school where they work?
Are most of, no, that's just a handful.
Okay.
I don't know if you know, and if you know, if you're able to share, but the biggest discussion about the out-of-zone was related to Garnett Elementary School.
Correct.
So how much were they affected? I mean, only 3 were denied, which is kind of interesting.
Well,
They
you have
have
to
small
remember,
class sizes.
you know,
Yeah.
when
So we
you
were
were
able-
looking at numbers this past summer, the students that were considered out of zone were already in that count.
Yeah.
So anybody
okay.
so anybody that would change would actually decrease their numbers. I mean, we really, we did not approve anyone that was new.
So the 3 that were denied were first-time requests?
Yes.
Okay.
And is that number pretty much static year to year, that you get about 55 requests?
It's increasing. Not by a lot, but it's increasing every year.
Okay.
If there is a sibling that's already in there, I just have a really hard time not including the other sibling, which that is the case where most of, our wait list was entirely a list of,
Siblings.
because they were siblings.
That's one of the, I like to think that's one of the issues with us being so small. You know, in bigger school districts, there's a lot more choice and easier to navigate. But us being so small, it's really sometimes that difficult, and you don't want to pull one here, one there. So
Well, I think and again, you're right, in a bigger system, you may not know the names and faces, but it makes absolutely no sense to me to accept a 4th grader but deny a 1st grader in the same family.
So we were looking at class sizes on the upper grades for Garnett, and right now they have 18 students in a class in 3rd grade, 23 in a class in 4th grade, and 22 in a class in 5th grade.
It's pretty good. That's good.
What about, I know I was at Rock Hall Elementary School, back to school, and was it 5th grade? It was just one 5th grade.
Yes.
They have
And they had
24.
25 at the time. Okay,
They have, right now, they have 24.
okay.
Right there.
Okay, do you know how that teacher's making out?
I have not heard
Okay.
anything, which to me is good news.
Okay. I do know fortunately, it was not a first-year teacher, it was an
Right,
experienced
exactly.
teacher, so.
And keep in mind, we have a student support coach in that class as well.
Oh, okay, well, that's helpful.
Francois, you asked me at the last meeting, we were looking at numbers, and if we were to take some of the pre-K out, and we noticed there were some, the numbers were a little larger at the elementary level in terms of, what grade levels lost the most kids coming through. And it was, the largest were students rising from grade 2 to grade 3. We lost 10 in that class over the
Entire district.
That's interesting.
That was our biggest loss. The second biggest loss was 1st grade to 2nd grade, we lost 7.
But we always see a gain from pre-K to K.
Yes.
Because we have some parents that don't send their students to pre-K, but then they enter
into K.
in at kindergarten, so we see a big bump on that end.
And everything else was like 2, 3 here.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Any questions?
Can I just ask, actually, isn't so much with what Ms. Williams gave, but what Dr. Couch had said about the student support coach or whatever, that I meant to ask you when you were talking about Dr. Shotery's thing about the elementary school coaches or whatever we're calling them. The last time at last month's meeting, I thought I remembered we needed 2 for the high school and 6 for the middle school. We'd had all 30 for the elementary school hired. How are we doing with the other 2?
That would be, we've
Okay.
got Ms. Giacomo coming up here, so
Okay.
she can talk about it.
Okay, well, you can just, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Williams,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Policy I, Curriculum and Instructional Manual. Ms. Jacomowitz.
Good evening, President Getz, Dr. Couch, members of the board, student member of the board. Would you like me to answer the question first?
That'd be
Okay,
easier.
so
I think it'd
we
be
have
flow
four
easier.
Sorry about
interviews-
that. It just-
4 interviews that are set up for, I think it's within the next 4 or 5 days. And the intent, and they're all secondary interviews.
Okay.
It's a little bit trickier at the secondary level because you really need that specific content knowledge in many situations. But also, we are, as Dr. Couch mentioned in the broadcast, partnering with the college. And so when students are in college, they may be available 2 days a week, and the intent is to have a coach for 5 days a week. So it's sort of like a puzzle. We're putting it together with the student schedule and the school needs and trying to match that. But I would say, with the work that Nicole Boyce has been doing, she showed me before she left today, we have 4 interviews set up, and we feel really strongly that we're making good progress with secondary.
What kind of feedback have you gotten at the elementary school level from the college students? I mean, I was thinking maybe they could be the best advertisement possible. If it's a good experience for them, maybe they'll spread the word.
Absolutely, and we have a mixture at the elementary level, as you heard Mr. Shodery speak about the community. It's kind of, we have a nice mixture of those that are in college at the elementary, but also community members that are
Retired
retired
teachers.
and
Good.
coming back in to
Okay.
work with our students. Initially, the training was intensive. I mean, you are taking, in some cases, community members that have never taught or tutored before, so it's a lot to take in and learn. But I will tell you right now, the feedback has been incredibly positive from staff. Having that second set of hands to really be on site and provide support immediately has been very well received.
I was wondering more about, from the people we've hired, what, are they as exuberant about it as our current staff?
Yes, so I mean, I can only speak to the few that
And you
I've
haven't
talked
heard
to
any
and
bad
involved.
stuff, is what
I
I'm
have
asking?
not.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
And do they push into the class? Is that how these?
They do. So
Okay.
the research on the high-dosage tutoring is the impact is when they're not pulling students out of class, which is a traditional method we've used in the past through Title I funding. This method pushes in. And the model was started in Rock Hall with that Sound Partners. That was the whole intent, where they just push into the classroom and become part of that classroom setting.
And their main job is to support the students in the classroom for academic
So
support.
Their position is twofold. The priority is academic intervention, but in the grant, it also spells out that they have had training and support for social emotional support as well. So really, it's about building relationships with the students and getting to provide that just-in-time intervention. In addition to that, when we have our early release days, the student support coaches are able to cover the classroom for an hour or two because, as you know, our teachers are required to go through letters training. It's an intensive training in the science of reading. And part of the way we're providing that time is that the student support coaches, the last PD day, they had 1 hour where they took over the classroom, and it gave them some experience sort of teaching and getting that experience of working with the students, while the teacher was nearby, you know, headphones on, getting to take their coursework as well. So it's definitely a partnership.
So they're in the classroom, they're doing that, and that's the job what they should be doing all day. And they're there for what, 5 hours?
They're there for 5 hours.
5 hours. And in that 5-hour time, it's safe to say that they'll be with the students and conducting intervention, social, emotional, and academic work.
So each coach has a schedule that's designed by the principal and the
Understood.
and the coach.
Understood.
And those schedules reflect a variety of intervention times during the day. And as I said, part of it is also the classroom culture in the school, so they will be assigned to a teacher. And it's about also providing, for example, they may have time where they're working with students to build that social emotional support as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if I'm off the mark with what I'm responding, but I'm just
I
telling you
think
what the
you're.
data
I think you're on the mark. I just want to make sure that, we get roles in schools, and I think sometimes with education being so transient, we start pulling folks here to do this, that, and the other, and then we lose touch on the mark why they're actually there, and really want to make sure that they are there for that one purpose.
We're tight on this.
Thank you.
Are you seeing an opportunity to have, maybe with the college students and perhaps with some of the community volunteers, to sort of fold them into the grow your own
That's
part
the
of
intent.
the
I mean,
leads?
Mr. Hutchin always keeps his eye on who's in our system.
Great.
And so he's already eyeing up some of the existing substitutes and college students and provide, did you want to add something
Yeah,
about
there's
that?
about between 6 and 8 current student support coaches that are either aspiring educators that are already enrolled in some sort of coursework or have expressed interest.
That's great.
It is definitely a pipeline that we're trying to absolutely take advantage of.
Excellent.
Win. Helping them to become
Yes.
educators.
Policy I, curriculum and instructional.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. So, at this time, I bring back to you a policy for approval. I initially brought this policy last month, which was originally adopted in 2002. We're now providing updates to be sure that we're both with federal and state requirements in terms of curriculum and instruction, the cycle of development, as well as program review. So tonight, I'm asking for approval of the.
No, it's first reading. Is it second reading?
Yeah, this
Oh,
is-
okay, I'm sorry.
Item for board approval.
For board approval.
I'm sorry, it's the next one.
That's okay.
So as Ms. Giacomowitz, this is an action item for board approval. Looking for a motion to approve. Policy I, curriculum and instructional manual.
So moved.
We have a motion by Dr. Costa. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Sullivan. Any further conversation, comments, questions?
I just had that when you say often review, what is like that is the yearly review,
It is an annual review.
annual review, and more questions on like licensing. You talked about just making when you review apart from your team, who else is involved in the reviews?
When there is an adoption of a new textbook, we actually have both staff and also a parent or community member on that panel. For example, right now, we're looking and visiting schools, looking at best practices in the area of science, and then we're going to contact the vendors, and a committee will be put together to review and go through. We have an actual process spelled out, and part of that review team includes parent and community member as part of the review.
And if a teacher wanted to add, say they found a curriculum tool that they thought was beneficial throughout the school year, did they go back to your department and ask for that to be put into the curriculum, or do they can
So
purchase it from the school side?
It usually starts at the school level, and so if you're referring to something that would be considered supplemental,
Yeah,
our
I am.
principals can approve that at the school level. If it's something we're adopting district-wide, we would involve our district team as well.
Thank you.
When you adopt a textbook, how many years do you use it for?
That's a great question. So we do try to look every 7 years to update our adoptions. However, with the changes with Common Core, it has really nudged us to try to stay on top of that with all, as you know, there are program changes based on whatever the latest framework or standards that are coming our way. So again, we look at that information and use that to guide the adoption. In addition to that, the data is used. So if we have no progress being seen over the course of multiple years, we'll bring it back and use that as part of the guidance to consider new adoption as well.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Costa. We have a second by Ms. Sullivan. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you.
So this is the item that's for information only.
This
I was
next
ahead.
item, thank you, Dr. Couch, is a procedure. It's the procedure for our English language program. In spring of 2022, Michelle Serino led our school system through a process of intensive monitoring to our English language program. So they looked at not only all of our policies and procedures, but they also looked at the implementation of our daily practices, and then we had to submit evidence of our assessments and our programs for review to the state. That's something that they do on a regular basis with all of our different programs that we offer. As part of that intensive review, we were asked to update our existing procedure that I'm bringing to you tonight for information only. So this procedure, one of the big changes that you'll note, and I did note the changes in red, is the name itself. Initially, it was called an Limited English Proficient, and it is now, again, being changed across the state to English Language Procedures. In addition to the name change, you'll see that we no longer refer to ELL or ESOL or English speakers of other languages. They are now either limited English, they are not limited English proficient or English speakers of other language. It is now called ELP, the English Language Program, or EL, English Learners. Again, it's an adjustment, it is a change, it is the appropriate name across the state of Maryland. So we're updating our procedure to reflect that.
And
In addition to the name change, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. In addition to the name change, we also had to update what we use for our screener process. So in the past, we had a notation of having world-class instructional design and assessment. Again, that was in the original procedure. That has now been updated to reflect what is happening in our schools, which is we assess using the home language survey and also something known as the WIDA screener. And that's how we determine the proficiency level of our students. Once they are given that assessment, parents have the right to either consent to approval for services or deny services for their child. So that also is part of the revision in our procedure, just to be sure that we offer that option for parents as well.
And
So-
who administers the screener, and when is it administered?
Thank you, I know I'm going very fast. So
Sorry.
it's administered upon registration.
Okay.
And it is administered by our English language teachers, so, in each of the schools.
How many students is English not their first language?
Last time I looked at the data, we had, I think it was 72 as a system.
How many, the reason I'm going to ask you is how many different languages, because I was in an elementary school yesterday in Caroline County where the assistant principal told me at one point they had 28 different languages being spoken in that school.
That's incredible.
So,
We're not seeing that. The
Is it
primary
primarily
language is still
Span?
Spanish.
Okay.
But we have in the past. I mean, we have had various languages. But again, I think we've become a little more savvy locally with some of the resources that we can offer, taking advantage of the support both from the college level and also some of the apps that are available to help us navigate some of that.
is there anything community-wise before a student comes to school to help them with the language that you are aware of? Or is the first?
Community-wide?
Well, what I'm saying is if we have a student coming into pre-K where English isn't their first language, is there any earlier intervention before they get to our school system?
Well, it's interesting you should ask, and I'm going to turn to Wendy because I'm not sure from special ed if there's anything there, but we have nothing from special ed. In the R for K, which is a Ready for Kindergarten grant, we have in that grant for this school year 2 early childhood tutors. They have not yet been hired because the intent of the grant was to find 2 bilingual tutors that would be able to help in the early childhood classrooms. It's not mandatory that they be bilingual, but that was the intent. So we are still advertising for those EL tutors in the early childhood classrooms.
And one of the part of me thinking that is a little bit thinking about what Mr. Johnson was asking you in terms of homeless families. It can't all fall on the school system, so I just wondered, do we have community partnerships that are able to help us with this at all?
I mean, I know in the past Chesapeake College has partnered with our teachers, and Washington College has helped us with some of the professional development, but quite honestly, I don't know that they've helped us with outreach.
Okay,
That's a
because I
really
was
good
thinking
question.
maybe with the homeless situation, that could be a social these are social services more than educational services, but what schools provide in the year 2022 are way beyond just reading and writing, so,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
So this procedure was more just to be sure that I've shared any updates and made you aware of the alignment with the latest adoptions.
Thank you, Ms. Jackalones.
Quick question, I'm sorry. What is our testing out? So once the students take the WIDA in the winter time, do we see students testing out of EL services?
We do, and they become REL students. And so those students will receive some support, but not nearly the intensive support of those that qualify based on their scores. We have seen tremendous success in terms of students that have been consistently in the program, and you'll see them, if we can intervene early on, but quite often you'll see them be able to grasp and work their way where that additional support is no longer needed. But I think you may have heard when Mr. Porter shared the information about the blueprint. This is also one of the important sections of the blueprint committee, one of the blueprint committees, resources for ensuring all students are successful. It's Pillar 4. And in Pillar 4, a segment of that at the state level, there's actually a work group for English learners, and they're studying exactly what you're saying. What are best practices, and how can we support these students and take away the idea that it's a negative connotation if you come to school speaking Spanish? Why not flip that and say, that's amazing, and now let's keep that particular language and build the English as well. I mean, we'd like to see everyone be bilingual. That's a fabulous goal.
Thank you.
Okay. That was for information only. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Procedure 400-12, Maryland Healthy Working Families Act. Mr. Hushin.
Thank you, President Getz, Dr. Couch, school board members. This is for information only. I would like to note that this is a brand new procedure, and it is in accordance with state law, where this act applies to all eligible employees. And eligible employees are those employees who are ages 18 and over, who are not already receiving the minimum amount of paid leave provided by this procedure pursuant to any existing board policies, other procedures, and or any collective bargaining unit. This also includes long-term substitutes, any part-time employees, or temporary employees that regularly work a minimum of 12 hours each week. This provides sick and safe leave for these employees, where they can accrue sick time at the rate of 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, and can use this time after 106 days of after their employment with us. We have been following this law, but this is just being brought forward to formalize the process, given the amount of part-time employees that we have hired over the last few years. I have included the procedure for you that you are able to access as well.
Any questions for Mr. Hushin?
So this, again, I just want to ask the question one more time to make sure. So these are employees who they're not paraeducators per se. These are looks like long-term substitutes.
Well, let's be careful with paraeducators. There's our full-time instructional assistants, but then we have our 5-hour inclusion assistants. Those individuals would fall under this.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you for clarifying. And can you just talk over, so they get to the 106, for the next, they can carry over how much?
Yeah, so it is outlined on being able to carry over time. They cannot roll over more than 40 hours.
Okay.
And cannot occur more than 64 in a school year.
A full-time employee, is there a limit to the number of hours they can roll over?
Yes, that's outlined in the negotiated agreement.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
And what unit is this BART collective?
This is,
No
these
unit?
employees are not part of any unit. They are
Bargaining unit.
part-time employees, and that is another reason why we are bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Okay, this item was for information purposes only. Are there any additional questions? Thank you, Mr. Hushin, we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're moving into administrative services, the letter A, expenditures revenue report.
Good evening, President Getz, Dr. Couch, members of the board. I'm stepping in for Ms. Stewart tonight. She couldn't be here. So my first item for you is to review all of our reports through September 30th of 2022. So if we take a look at our first Fund 1, which is all of our current expenses, these are our receipts from July 1st of 2022 through September 30th of 2022. So you can see for Fund 1, we're at about $9.5 million. For Fund 3, our school construction, we're just slightly over $1 million. This will be going up by next month. We just put in one of our state requests and then our county requests through September 30th as well. So that'll be a significant jump for next board meeting through October 31st. Food service, we're about $650,000, giving us a total cash receipts thus far for the year of about $11.2 million. So if we move on down to our current expense fund, Fund 1, we have encumbered or expensed about 72% of that fund for our fiscal year 23. And then if we keep on moving, we get to school construction fund, which is a little bit above what we were thinking it was going to be for the year, mostly because they're actually making more progress on the roof than we kind of anticipated them making. Thankfully, our contractors done very well overall, but we also had some good weather for the most part outside of the last couple weeks, so they've been able to consistently move forward in the evening time during the school year when we weren't sure originally if we'd be able to have them, for the evening time. So we're looking in very good shape to be done early next summer as opposed to the end of next summer. So that's why it's a little bit higher than what we were anticipating for this year. So if we keep going down to our food service fund, we're at about right above 50% for the year in terms of encumbrances and then expenditures. And then our final one that we have here is our restricted funds, which we're about 24% for the year for our restricted funds. And then I think we should have our chart here. So there are any questions on the year so far for any of our finances, feel free to ask.
Any questions? This was for information purposes only, no actions required. Thank you for that. Then we're going to move on to our capital improvement plan, CIP.
Okay, good evening again, everybody. I'm here to present our 2024 CIP, or Capital Improvement Plan. This year's request is very simple. It's simply the latter half of the roofing project from the state side. And then it also outlines kind of where we are in the process with the Kent County Middle School. We've already touched base on it tonight, and the state that is involved with the CIP has also been in a good portion of our EdSpec meetings, so they are very well aware of where we are in the process as well. So we outlined it in there, but like I said, we didn't really need to because they're very adept of where we are in this process right now.
So have we sent this to the state? Don't we have to approve it and send it to the state every year? We've already done that.
This is what you're doing, is
Okay.
improving it.
Gotcha.
So it's
Okay,
submitted, the
it's an
initial
action.
submission is early October, and then
Okay.
we bring it to the board for their approval, and then we have our final submission at the beginning of November.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there any questions regarding the CIP plan? Okay, this is an action item, so the administration is recommending approval of the 2024 through 2029 capital improvement plan. Do we have a motion to approve?
I make the motion that we approve the capital improvement plan.
Ms. McGee has the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to commend Mr. Kirby for doing an outstanding job on the plan. It's pretty involved and requires a lot of work to get it completed and done on a timely manner. So he did a great job. Just wanted to acknowledge that.
Great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is policy EEA, transportation alternative vehicles.
Mr. Wheeler could not be here this evening. This is the second reading of this policy. It is, as you note, a procedure and a policy that allows us to use alternative vehicles. We are allowed by the state to request for waivers on any of the provisions for normal bus drivers, but we are not requesting any waivers. We want all of our drivers to be well-suited to drive the alternative vehicles as well. So this is just a policy for your approval.
Have we received those vehicles yet
Not yet.
at this time? Okay.
Okay, the administration is recommending approval of the updates to the transportation policy EEA. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Sullivan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is policy DLC, expense reimbursement.
Good evening again, everybody. I'm here to present the second reading of policy DLC, which is our expense reimbursement policy. There was just a couple changes that we made in terms of some wording to replace business manager with our supervisor of finance, and then to update our travel reimbursement mileage rate to what is the IRS mileage rate, basically.
The administration is recommending or requesting approval of the updates to the policy DLC expense reimbursement. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion by Dr. Costa. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Sullivan. Any further comments or questions, concerns? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Kirby. The next item on the agenda is policy AC, non-discrimination policy.
This is the first reading of a revision to the non-discrimination policy statement that would be located on all of our student handbooks and also our website. It is also reflective of House Bill 850, which prohibits a local board of education from refusing enrollment of a prospective student, expelling a current student, withholding privileges from, and otherwise discriminating against any individual because of an individual's race, ethnicity, color, religion, sex, age, national origin, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. It also prohibits retaliatory actions against a student or parent or guardian of a student who files a complaint alleging specified discrimination. So this has been reviewed by legal counsel, and this is first reading of the policy.
Are there any questions regarding the policy?
And like you said, some of this is coming down from state law.
Yes,
Is that what most of the changes are, reflective of that?
yes.
Okay. As Dr. Couch mentioned, this is for information only. I'm pretty sure we'll see you next month.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. The next item is policy KDDC.
Right, it's in, I would present it also with procedure 328, which is use of social media. This is responsible, it's a new policy. It would be policy KDDC, it's responsible use of social media. I know we talked about having a social media policy. This is a brand-new policy. It's reflective of what we would expect our employees to consider when using social media policy. And one of the things that I think is important to note is
the policy statement that it's the board's overarching goal in social media is to foster relationships with the community, model positive digital citizenship for staff and students, and celebrate school system and student successes. So the policy is very vague, not vague, but it's basically a catch-all, if you will, to identify what social media policy would be in place for, and the procedure identifies more details in terms of what we would expect with regard to use of social media policy. So there's that, and the procedure, let me see if I can access that real quick. Procedure 328 is use of social media, and there, again, we outlined some specific procedures with regard to what we would utilize in terms of determining whether it's professional use of social media and how it would be used from personal standpoint and also within the school system. So I'm happy to go into detail of all of that, or stand for questions if you have any questions.
I think it's important to state that this is in no way intended to limit staff being able to communicate on social media. It's just sort of reiterating that social media is another place where we need to apply all of the same communication requirements as we do with any other medium. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
I have a little problem with that paragraph, the board's overarching goal is the only thing they can do is celebrate the school system and student successes. Does that mean they can't criticize the school system, or?
No, we're not taking away their First Amendment or their right to speak out. It's just saying as a general rule, that's what we're using social media policy for, or using social media as a school system for professional use, is to communicate and push out that kind of information to our families.
And that's really regarding professional use.
Yes.
So if there's a PTA Facebook page or a school Facebook page, so that isn't talking about personal usage.
So when a staff person or an employee of Kent County Public Schools speaks out on social media, how do you draw the line between them speaking out as as Joe P. Public and Mr. Joe P. Public, who's a teacher? How do you determine that?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. There's a long line of cases stemming from a Supreme Court case called Pickering involving a balancing test for public employees, state employees, local government employees, employees of any sort of state agency who engage in personal use of social media. And the test, in a sentence, is balancing the right of that employee as a citizen to comment on matters of public concern versus the state employer's right to have an employee efficiently and effectively carry out its mission. And so you see this arise with, there's cases involving schools all across the country in which teachers post compromising photos of themselves, and then the students see them, and then it undermines that teacher's ability to have respect and authority in the classroom. You see this with police officers who make posts that might undermine their authority in the community. This occurs in almost every context, and in every case, the courts apply this Pickering balancing test, which first looks at what hat is that person wearing? Are they wearing their citizen hat or their employee hat? And then balancing the rights of the citizen to comment on matters of public concern versus the right of the public employer to carry out its mission.
So we're talking about all Kent County Public School employees? So are board members considered Kent County Public School employees? We do get a paycheck. So
these rules, these Supreme Court, these rules that have emanated from the Supreme Court about the First Amendment's application in social media they apply regardless of, whether you're adopting a specific policy or not. They're just matters of well-settled First Amendment case law. But do they apply to board members? Well, that's something to consider as well. If it's certainly First Amendment principles applied to you all as citizens
Right.
and also as public officials, and
Yeah.
those tests are a bit different.
The reason I'm asking is because I think one of the things that might have spurred on movement to us adopting a social media policy and procedure was there was some public criticism at a school board meeting. So I just thought it would be good to hear from a lawyer what a board member can and can't do.
I mean,
I don't know the answer, but I guess what I'm acknowledging is that the policy we adopt will apply to us.
I think it's best practice for us, if we're going to push this out, that we should follow the same procedures.
Okay, I'm just.
Which
Yeah.
is why I think we need to be especially thoughtful about how we are presenting something that could potentially be misunderstood as taking away First Amendment rights of anyone working for Kent County Public Schools, which is not the intention of this policy.
No, and I'm not suggesting in any way that I want to curtail what people say. I'm just having a discussion to acknowledge the fact that it's been discussed publicly, that's all.
Yeah, I think what the courts are increasingly recognizing is that debate on, when they say matters of public concern, they mean matters of, politics, community issues, really anything that would affect the community or the school system, concerning the business of the school system or the business of the government. People engage in those debates on social media nowadays, and in addition to in other forums as well. And so they have, the courts have increasingly applied these tests to a social media landscape and evaluated this balancing test to determine the impact of speech, which may not be, first of all, is it protected speech in the first place? And if it's protected, engaging in that balancing test to determine if the employer's rights are outweigh the individual's rights. And that comes out on, different sides depending on the circumstances of the case.
Well, and noting on the position itself, it says KCPS strives to provide access to social media to employees for professional use in a manner consistent with First Amendment to the United States Constitution, as well as other applicable federal and state laws. So.
I'm just asking a
no,
question.
no,
I don't
I'm
want
just-
anybody to think I'm throwing
no.
anybody under the
that's-
bus.
No,
Well, it's a
but I think
fascinating-
that's why
Yeah.
we're just
It's
trying
one of the
to.
more fascinating topics
Okay.
of the law, and it's something that I know I was just looking back, I presented at a conference on this last year, and I think it's just a evolving topic as the medium evolves.
Right.
Well,
And I think it's a balancing act in terms of, we're probably, with the adoption of this policy, will be one of, I think, 8 school systems that will have a policy on social media. So I think it's one that will help govern us. We've run into situations with employees where if we'd have had a policy, we could have probably handled it perhaps a little differently. But I think it's just cautionary in terms of noting that there are First Amendment rights, but, there is a professionalism that we have to treat each other with regard to social media.
So how did we go about fashioning ours? Did we look at others and see what we like? And
Yeah.
Okay.
And then ran this by legal counsel as
Okay.
well.
Well, would a staff member, a teacher, say, or any other staff member, could they get in trouble if they're not, celebrating the school system?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's a difference between personal use of social media, which people can engage in all discussions about all sorts of topics, and that's their personal life. But that refers to like the KCPS official Facebook page, which is merely a bulletin board.
Yeah.
It's no different than a bulletin board out in the hallway. And as you mentioned, perhaps a school Facebook page would serve as the same, same function. So that's what that's referring to.
So really, we're focused on professional, slightly focused, really focused on both, but really professional versus personal. So I agree the policy is needed, but I also don't want to get in position where, it becomes a bully tactic. A lot of our employees, voice their opinion about the workday, or they voice their opinion about something, and that can come back to the school system. And then, I'm not saying this happens in Kent County, but I've seen it happen in private business. I've seen it happen in other public spaces and public sector, where that being brought back to, there's now some little mutters and discussion. Oh my gosh, did you see what this person wrote? Let me call them in. I don't want that to happen, because I could see that folks thinking that would happen, So I guess it goes back to that balancing. Where does it get to the point where we're not having to, people shouldn't feel like I'm walking on eggshells
Or that somebody's policing social media.
Their social media
what
all the
somebody
way.
posted.
Well, in many cases, when there have been issues with social media, oftentimes it's brought to our attention by parents, students, situations in which social media may have been used inappropriately, as Mr. Constance was saying, something that was an inappropriate post that is not becoming or professional, and it does not reflect a standard that we would want as a school system in terms of our employees and how they present themselves. So I don't think any of us are trying to limit speech.
No, I'm not. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
no, I'm
have-
just saying that.
Yeah.
We're not trying to limit speech in that regard, but what we're saying is there is a professional use of social media that we would expect people to consider when they post. You wouldn't want teachers posting, something that is inappropriate and it's going to come back to them in the classroom in a negative fashion.
Are there any additional questions? These were for information only.
We'll vote on it next month?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so policy KDDC, responsible use of social media, and procedure 300-28, use of social media, as I just mentioned, were information only. We'll revisit this next month. The next item on the agenda is policy BCF, Citizen Advisory Committee.
Right. You have before you some stated recommendations in terms of some changes that we would like to make to the policy itself. First thing that was noted is that the student member will be appointed to a one-year term. However, the student may reapply for an additional term, and if the total committee is to be reappointed, 6 members randomly selected shall serve a one-year term, and the remaining members will serve 2 years. So those are the changes in red. We made a decision at the CAC that at the April board meeting, the Board of Education would appoint new board members, and the term would be July 1, ending June 30.
Can I ask a question about that? So currently, I'm a board member that's on the CAC, and I may not get reelected. So what happens to a second member that's on the CAC? Will somebody be appointed to fill that out?
Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's no different than if we have resignations from, which we do have resignations from 2 of the CAC members.
Which
We'll
I
have
wanted
make-
to bring to the board.
Right, which we'll get to that in a minute. So that would have to be assigned in terms of how we fill those positions. Application for the membership of the CAC would be no later than March 1st. They would submit their applications. All committee members shall coincide with the academic school year. That's something different. We initially were going from December to December and said that really doesn't work out. So July 1 through June 30 is what we are looking at. For consecutive, another point was 4 consecutive absences will result in removal from the advisory committee. That's something we can talk about, but just put that on there in terms of, is that something that the board would wish to consider? And then the board may exercise its right not to fill a vacancy, which we do have 2 vacancies, in cases where the remainder of the unexpired term is a short period of time or impractical to fill. And noted there was some questions about the superintendent's presence at the meetings itself, and just noting the statute itself, that however, in accordance with 4-102C of the educational article of the annotated code of Maryland, the superintendent will serve in an advisory capacity to the committee and will be present to facilitate organizational communication as directed by the committee or committee chairs. So that spells out, what the purpose is of having the superintendent be involved in the committee itself. Noting in the closing statement that it is a limited and structured forum for the advisory committee. The advisory committee shall not be a forum for circumventing the authority of the communication or organizational structure of the Kent County Board of Ed. Parents should be directed to follow the communication structure as outlined in the parent communication flow chart, which we have on our website in order to resolve problems. In other words, making sure that problems are solved at the lowest level, and not trying to use the citizens advisory as a way of solving individual problems. But that is what was noted. There were some questions about, do we, when we look at having a student, should they be in good standing? That's something I don't know if you would like to add in there. I mean, be aware whether the student is in good standing or not.
What's your definition of good standing?
I'm just repeating.
No, I'm just saying, what does that mean? They
I would
have all Fs? I don't know what that
I would
means.
be welcome to any student who wanted to apply to be a part of
Right.
the committee.
And that was just raised by a citizen. Do we want to consider, I'm just reading what was submitted to the board members.
I mean, I'll just add as context, though, we have standards for students who play sports, and we hold people back. I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying that there is established structure on anything outside of standard. So I kind of feel like if we have sports players that you can't do this because you're just not there, and then you turn around and, but if you volunteer in a completely different space, or you want to put yourself out there in a completely different space, I'm just thinking about the other kids.
I would like to add that I definitely agree with that, because we can't, if someone's not in good standing, they can't go to sports events. I don't really see the benefit, if they're not in good standing, for them to be a student advisor on the Citizen Advisory Committee.
I just think,
I'm not
I
saying
agree.
that
I'm just
they
saying that I
will
think
be-
if I apologize.
No, go ahead.
If we're going to put it out there and we hold this third of students to something, then it should be a little bit more, a wider net, is my opinion.
I'm happy to go with the consensus of the board, but I also don't want to limit opportunities for students who want to engage.
What is the definition of student in good standing? Is it based on academics, or is it based on something else?
I think that could be our definition.
You have to define it.
Yeah, well, if you look at, and we'll be talking about this a little bit later when we talk about the student member of the board. In Comar, it talks specifically about student board members being in good standing, and that's exactly the way it's worded in.
I'll ask, and I don't know if, Mrs. Williams isn't still here, but Ms. Giacomowitz is here, and Braden might know the answer to this.
Hi.
I know the academic requirements to play sports. Are there academic requirements to be in the band or to do a play?
Not to do a play.
Not to do,
Okay.
not to do a play, and for band, it's, if you're in the class, I don't think you.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just curious as what is a student in good standing is. Maybe, like Mr. Johnson says, we need
So
to
for-
define that.
Yeah,
Maybe
for-
you could be a straight A student, but be a kid that's putting in-school suspension every other day because you're misbehaving. I don't know.
Yeah, for our good, like, standing, I think we have an attendance thing, then we have a grade thing, which I think is like a 2.0, and then just no, like, referrals or stuff like that, so.
So it's broader than just
It's not-
academics.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just academics, it is.
But there's
wide
something
span.
written, like at the high school, for example, there's
It
a,
defines
said
good
this is what
standing.
a student in good standing, these are the criteria they must meet.
Be clear, because good standing and academic eligibility and athletic eligibility are kind of
I know, that's
two
why I'm.
different things. That's why I
That's
said I
why
think you have
I'm
to define
asking,
it.
and Mr. Wallace says it's more than just grades. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
But
more-
I'm asking you, is that written down somewhere? Or is that just sort of
I-
the unwritten rule that we follow?
Ms. Hemstetter talks about it a lot, so
Okay.
I think that would be a good question to ask Ms. Hemstetter.
Feels like a great follow-up question, yes.
Yeah.
Is that
So,
something you
I was
could
just-
look into for us?
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
I see her every day, so
Right.
it shouldn't be hard.
Yeah, I mean, my point was, I mean, we have students that are not allowed to participate in certain extracurricular or other stuff because of this standard that we're waiting to find out what it is.
Yes, I'm not
No,
disagreeing
and
with
I'm
you.
not
I'm
saying
just
you are.
saying.
I'm just saying, for me, it feels fair to kind of put it out there a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more so that there are more than just a pocket of kids that are, got to get it together.
I'm not disagreeing with any
that's
of
all I'm
that,
saying.
but I just want to explore.
It would be good
If
to
we're
know
going to
what
use
the
a term, I want to
universal
know what the
standard
term
is.
means.
Well, and I'm not saying we're going to use a term, I'm just
Yeah.
saying a community member brought that up
Okay.
as a suggestion.
Okay.
So if that's something you want to put in there, we can. If that's not something you want to put in there, we don't need to.
And-
Another question that was brought up was, do outgoing members have to reapply for the position? And so I was looking at the policy itself, on the first page of the policy that says outgoing members are eligible for reappointment by the board. And then I thought of adding this additional statement, and must reapply for an additional term.
I think that's important. I think that they can be eligible if they want to reapply, but the board still decides who's going to be
Right,
appointed.
must reapply for the additional. So I would bring that change. Trying to see what else was. The other question was, officers, the Kent County Board of Education shall select a board member annually. And the question was from the community member, which meeting?
I mean, if I could just, I think it's the very first meeting, January of the year.
Well, but see,
But
We'll be
outside-
halfway into
But
somebody's.
what happens, if, for example, to Tricia's
Yeah.
point, if she's,
So we
our
follow
terms
a
are not
calendar
aligned with
year?
the policy.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the issue. So we will ultimately, no matter what, unless folks get
I
reelected.
would say at the beginning,
First of the year.
Yeah,
the first of the year.
So
good
January?
with that, yeah. I'm good with that.
Okay, I'll make that change. Let's see, what else?
Can I ask a question, and this is going to be probably for legal counsel?
Yeah.
Just from my following of local government and the commit, like I'll use Chestertown, for example. The town of Chestertown has a number of committees and commissions, and some of them are, there's a difference between a committee and a commission. But anyhow, some of them are considered public bodies, and what they can and what they can't do. And I'm going to take ownership of this, because I'm pretty sure, with me in charge, at our last meeting, we violated the Open Meetings Act because we went off of our agenda and considered two other things that we had not approved for the agenda. So can you clarify exactly that?
Yes, the CAC, the Citizen Advisory Committee, is considered a public body subject to the Open Meetings Act because it's a committee created by statute of an otherwise, of a public body otherwise subject to the act. And so the Open Meetings Act manual is pretty clear on that subcommittees of public bodies can either be expressly created, and in this case, I would consider the CHC to be expressly created by statute, because there's a statute, section 4-112 of the education article, which says each county board shall establish at least one citizen advisory committee to advise the board, and so on. Public committees can also be created impliedly. But this is pretty clear cut. This is expressly created by statute and thus is a public body subject to the Open Meetings Act. So yeah, so the answer to your question is
Does
yes.
given that, does anybody have any
I have
questions?
a question more for me. So I was just wondering, so the Citizens Advisory Committee doesn't have any type of public comment, right?
No.
So why is that, just for me personally?
We don't have any authority to do anything with the information that's given to us other than pass it along to the board. So, and even then, the best way to get that information from a community member to the board is for them to reach out to the board directly, rather than going through the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Like Mr. Unikas did tonight.
Yeah, coming to a board meeting, emailing anybody on the board or Dr. Couch, or depending on what the issue is, following the flow chart to see where in the process you should start.
Okay, thank you.
As we discuss this policy, we've been, this has been an ongoing policy that we started.
It's fluid.
Very fluid policy. Turning to our chairs now, how do you think the meetings have been going? Maybe how do you create your agendas, things like that? So, because some of us are not there, we're not there. So, could you just walk us through the process of maybe a meeting and what that looks like?
Generally, what we do is about 2 weeks out from a meeting, I will email the entire committee and ask for suggestions to be put on the agenda, and I will get responses, and we build our agenda based on suggestions given to us by members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Occasionally, we will offer something like when Strong Schools Maryland was going to be here to do a presentation. We added that to the agenda because we wanted to make sure that people knew about the blueprint. The other way that things can get added to the agenda is if the board asks us to take something back to the Citizens Advisory Committee, like they did with this policy, as a matter of fact, in our last meeting. Joe said, please take this back to the committee and ask them to give a recommendation on it. So those are really the 3 ways that agenda items are built.
And you would say that the meetings have been quite productive.
We've had some very productive conversations, I think. I wanted to go back to the fact that we have also had 2 resignations. While we may refill those positions if the board decides to, they are people who are representing 2 different schools, so we still have a representative from each of the schools that they have left. And we have fulfilled what is the written obligation of the committee, which is to hold at least 4 meetings and to have at least 1 presentation to the board. And because we're already extending the term for our current members, and the application process will begin in just a few months, my recommendation would be to not fill those 2 spots and just finish out till the end of the school year and then bring in the new applicants as they come in.
I just want to also say, without calling out anybody by name, so that someone, at least in these particular incidents, it's not a case of somebody being disillusioned, disappointed, unhappy. In one case, it's a parent whose child is no longer in our school system, and in the other case, it's a parent who got on one of our pillar, and they felt that that was their priority, and they couldn't really serve on both, so.
But I will leave it up to the board if you want to open up the application process or if you feel like we could wait.
So we have 2 things going on. One is the information piece here, and so.
Which next month we'll vote on.
Right.
Okay.
So I think we have that, Ms. Sullivan, you're talking about something different.
I am, and maybe we could just put that on next month's agenda as well
Yeah.
to decide if we're going to fill those positions.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
think
fine with
I'd,
that.
just for people on the board and that they can think about it, are we, with the recommendations or what Dr. Couch went through, are there any additional suggestions for change before we move on to the next item regarding this policy?
I'll make those adjustments that we just talked about, adding that the board member would be selected in January, that
Well, there's actually 2 board members.
Right.
Oh, okay. I thought you just said the
Right.
singular.
Whoever the
Okay.
chairs are.
Right.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
And then that those eligible for reappointment must apply for the additional term. So those are the changes that I'll put in there as well. And then Braden's going to let us know about good standing, so we can consider that at the next board meeting.
Did have one more thing, and it kind of goes with Tricia's Open Meetings Act issue. We did discuss at the last meeting the idea of a guest speaker, and if that is something that we would want to incorporate into Citizens Advisory Committee meetings. And we have had Strong Schools Maryland come as a guest speaker. We have had Chris Henstetter come as a guest to talk about some things at the high school. And it was left kind of open how the committee felt about that, but I also wanted to maybe have a little bit of a discussion about that as well. My feeling is the role of a guest speaker would be somebody who has expertise in an area that they want to convey to us, and I think that if it was related to the agenda, we would definitely try to incorporate that. But if it is something that should be presented to the board, then I would say that that person could potentially be asked to come and present it to the board rather than to speak to the CAC. But again, I wanted to have a discussion with the board about how they felt.
I think that's a good idea. I think, it is a space to inform as well, because, you're serving, and I think anytime you're serving, you should be up to date on what's happening and what's going on. I think it's a good idea. I had just another question, but I'll ask to your question now if anybody else has anything else.
I've got a question about that. So who makes the invitation? Who decides who's is an expert on something? Can any of the CAC, I'm asking generally, can any CAC member ask someone to come and present?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just make a couple comments.
And we don't have to make any decisions
No,
tonight.
I think there's 2 elements to this, right? One is directionally, is this school board pushing down a request for further discussion into the CAC? That's one element.
Mm-hmm.
The second element is there something that the representatives from the schools have pulled together and brought forward an idea that they're asking for, or they're looking for some additional information to help with that, I don't want to use the term business case because that's my world, but to help with that cause or the understanding of what that looks like. So I think it's twofold. I think it's certainly the CAC should have a voice in what that is based on, subject matter. And I think the board, if the board were to push down an idea or a request to look at whatever, then does it make sense for us to go ahead and ask, maybe it will help them bring someone in. And then at any point, I think if because we're still expecting that the committee comes forward and presents to the board.
Annually.
Annually. But maybe at some point, there's something out there that rises to the top and we're sitting there, yeah.
For example, hearing Coach Yanikis tonight, it might be something that, because it's out there in social media, people have discussed it, it may be something that comes to the CAC, and there may be
we
some
have
really
discussed
amazing things that come out of that we may bring back to you and say, hey, somebody made this amazing suggestion that we never even considered.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Trish, the fact is, yeah, you need a driver, you put a bus on the street, kids get home. It's way more than that, right? So what are the benefits of that? I
Yeah.
mean, we heard about it, but it's way more. You had mentioned that it's not only sports, but it's so
It's
that,
any kid that wants to stay behind for something.
So that's the cause, the case, that if that's an area that it can be pulled together, and maybe in that space, someone, I'm not sure if there's anyone locally, but maybe someone has put together some information, regarding the benefits, or there's something out there, then,
Or somebody maybe from another
Yeah.
school district that tells us how they navigated that issue.
So I think it's very fluid on both sides. That's
Okay.
just my thought. I mean, I guess to answer your question to go back is that I personally would be open to either or. You know, however that generates that person or that guest speaker, you know, that's where we are. I mean, I think the intent would be to get that subject matter in, so.
I guess my question is, when at the beginning of the term, is really focusing on how using our goals and our core values to guide the work of the committee. I think that's important. I don't know. We strategic plan the retreat. We have a strategic plan, and seeing some of that, I think that work trickle down would be beneficial. I don't know how, when you're not setting up the agendas, but or starting, maybe a new committee comes on, maybe having some time to just sit at the table and pair, this is what our strategic plan is, and so what do we, some sort of work like that as well. I don't.
It was just discussion.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I feel better informed. Thanks.
Okay, great. The next item on the agenda is student member of the board discussion. This is an area where we've had some input from many folks, and, we had asked Dr. Couch to put this on the agenda tonight, so I would ask that we just open it up for conversation.
One thing that interests me is how a student board member is elected. Our previous student board member actually made a suggestion that middle school students, some of whom are 11 or 10, would vote for a student board member, and I find this ludicrous, but.
Well, I'm going to ask Braden, did any students vote for, was it put to a student vote, or
Yes, there was a student vote.
the
So
entire,
how many
the
students
entire
voted?
student body?
The entire student body was supposed to get the ballot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any idea what kind of response there was?
Were there other people running?
No. So no one actually technically ran against me, but there was 4 other people interested, and I told them that I was doing it, and they were like, I would rather see you doing it. So it doesn't mean there's not competitiveness for the field. It was just kind of like a natural, we chose who we wanted kind of thing.
Can you tell us what the process is for just throwing your hat in the ring at all?
So
Or-
I started my process by coming, I don't know if you guys ever saw me,
Yeah,
but
I saw
I
you.
came to like a lot of the board meetings before, just so I knew what I was trying to get into. And then it is kind of a simple application process. So the principal opens it up, and I completed 3 essays. I got recommendation letters from a person that I'm involved with extracurricularly and a teacher. And then there would be a vote. So then
And you submitted a resume.
Yes, and I submitted a resume as well. That just let me.
So where was the, how did the vote work? Was it just for this, or there are other things?
So
on
the student
ballot?
government would put out a Google form. That's our easiest way of voting for, and that's what we do for student government, because I'm also the president of that.
So how many people actually voted?
I don't have the information to that was a administration led that vote. I mean, I'm sure I could probably find it.
And no middle school kids?
No middle school
Just
kids.
the high school.
Just high school students. Yeah.
You had brought up at the last meeting about having an advisory vote, and I actually really like the idea of recording an advisory vote from the student member of the board. So that's something I would definitely be open to.
Yeah.
But that also entails us kind of figuring out what things you can and can't vote on. Because we do bring things back out here to vote on, but then there are also some things that maybe it would be best for you not to participate in that vote. So figuring out as a board what we would want to record a vote.
So could I suggest that we talk about, kind of take things in tiers, I think, first. So the first thing that I think would be applicable for us to discuss would be legal representation on the board itself. So right now, we don't have anything in the
Handbook.
education articles about
Braden or anyone being a legal member of the board. As a matter of fact, it's silent in the education article itself. There are 2 counties in which it's silent, and Kent County is one of them. So what I did was I went through, and I'm not saying that this is something you'd want to do, but what I did was go through and look at what we had in the educational article and made some suggestions on what I think we may want to do with regard to proposed changes to 3-801, which is membership. What I would say is just making a slight change by adding number 2, which would say, Kent County Board consists of 5 elected members, each of whom resides in Kent County, and 2, 1 non-voting student member. And then adding the election of members, which would be a non-voting student member, and that would be a new section of 3-801. And it would say, A, the non-voting student member shall be a bona fide resident of Kent County, a regularly enrolled Kent County High School junior or senior in good standing. That's what is in almost every other document in the education articles. I looked at all of them, as a matter of fact, just to see how others did that. And a student government association representative who is elected in accordance with procedures established by the Kent County Board of Education. And then adding B, the student member would serve on the board for 1 year beginning July 1 after the election of the student member of the board. And then adding item F under student member, 1, the student member shall attend all regular meetings of the county board. 2, the student member may advise all members on thoughts and feelings of the students except on matters related to personnel, budget, collective bargaining, and other topics reserved for executive sessions, closed meetings of the county board. And then 3, the student member may not attend executive sessions, closed meetings of the county board. So these would be suggestions. I ran them by legal counsel just to make sure that I didn't leave anything out. And this would make, what we would do is, if this is something that you would like to do, we would take this, Delegate Jacobs agreed that he would carry that forward as a legislative change to Articles 3-801, and it would then be taken before the legislature and make the student board member a bona fide member of the board. But it would be a non-voting student member.
So I'm going to get caught in the minutia, okay? Non-voting, is it necessarily the correct? It's a the student member would still have an advisory vote.
Right.
But
Is it
non-vote.
advisory or opinion?
Well, that's a
Advisory.
question, because non-voting means, to me, if I'm reading this, that it's no vote on, not even nothing.
Right, okay. So, let me just say this. There are several counties that have this in their education article, and they do have ceremonial votes by the student board member themselves. So it would not be reflected as a vote of the final board. So when we say non-voting member, that means when we register the vote in the minutes, it wouldn't have the student board. Like, for instance, if we voted right now and we had 4 ayes and a nay, it would be reflected as 4 ayes, 1 nay. And then if we allowed the student to have a ceremonial vote, then it would list the student board member as their vote, separate.
Yeah.
If they were a voting member, then it would have to be, he would have to be added in with
Yeah.
all of the votes.
No, I'm with you, but
Would
I,
have
To have an extra board member, because there could be ties.
There could be
Well, there
ties.
could be ties anyhow.
yeah, but I'm just going back to the non-voting in true if it's a ceremonial vote with ... I don't know what the verbiage is, but it's still a vote. So this is implying to me, if I'm reading it, that it's no vote, ceremonial, advisory, nothing, just That's where I'm at.
Well, can't you
Yeah.
break it into 2 sentences and say, the student member of the board shall be a bona fide student, da-da-da-da, in good standing and all that other stuff? And then part of that says, the student member
May offer an
may offer an advisory or whatever you say.
An advisory opinion.
I'll just read you what Queen Anne says as an example, which I think is emblematic of a lot of others. The student member, in addition to the serving 1 year and being a student government association representative, shall be non-voting and advise the county board on the thoughts and feelings of students in the Queen Anne's County Public Schools.
Which is what ours says. Ours says,
Same thing.
But
Says
that's
same
still,
thing.
but it still doesn't speak to the advisory vote, right?
No, and
That's where I'm heading. Like, to me, like, I wouldn't want someone out there reading this, and maybe it's just me, and I can get off of it. I'm not gonna, like, fall on the sword on it, but I don't want the impression to be
I have
that.
something that might help. So Calvert County says, officially, the student is a non-voting member of the board. However, the student may cast a symbolic vote on matters coming before the board.
right, but that's not in statute.
Correct, yeah.
That's
just defined in their voting
Yeah,
rights.
that's just defined within, what we decide in terms of applying what is.
Is the student
acted
member going to
upon.
be compensated financially?
Let's just talk about this right now. Let's talk about this right now.
So I guess the question, if it's not, maybe, okay, I hear what President Getz is saying, and to be clear is to be better, I guess, in some way. Is this something we would just, on the advisory vote, would a simple putting that in our board handbook?
Board handbook, yeah.
Would that suffice? I'm looking
right, so
towards.
the example you just gave from Calvert, that was just their board internal policy. The statute, which authorizes them to have a student member, says the same thing I read earlier in Queen Anne's, non-voting member and advise the board on the thoughts and feelings of the students.
Okay.
So what they just went above and beyond and just made their own.
I just don't want it to be, and I'm sorry to cut, I
That's
just
okay.
really don't want it to be that if our student member of the board has an advisory vote, they have a vote. The words matter to some people. And so I don't know, and maybe it's verbalized elsewhere, but I just want to be clear that the student member of the board has a vote.
Right. Well, I looked at every single school district, and there's nothing in statute that says there's a ceremonial vote. But if you look at application of what they do internally, there is something in their handbooks or something that's reflective of that.
As long as we have it, as long as that lives somewhere.
So can maybe next meeting, could you bring
Handbook?
with the handbook, maybe
Well, okay, so.
A sample revision,
right,
I'm
What I would like to do is have some consensus on whether we can live with this, because then I would need to get this to Delegate Jacobs, who needs to then put something together for legislation, and he needs it by November.
So I'm going to
So,
add a few things that Baltimore County has about what the student member can vote on. And it has, in addition to what you have listed on the policy, they also mention hearings, that they would not participate in hearings. And I don't know if we need to specify that. And
That would
That'd
be-
be a closed session kind of stuff,
well,
wouldn't
that
it?
would be closed session, and that would be personnel.
Okay, and
For
then.
budget.
That would be outside of the scope of the public meeting, because
Right.
it's a judicial function, not
Right.
not an advisory.
And they also mentioned school closings, reopenings, and boundaries. And student disciplinary matters.
Okay, so again, are you reading what's in statute?
No, I'm reading what
No,
they're listing as the items that they cannot vote on, just to get a
Right.
better.
I
sort of-
think that we could add that into the handbook.
Okay.
This might be
I
something
agree
that would
with
go to
that,
the
that
handbook
if
as
we
well,
put this
but
in,
will
and then
this-
we had the other in the handbook, I think that's a fair.
this might be a handbook thing too, but since the student member of the board can be a junior or a senior, does that student have, let's pretend Braden's a junior. Could he repeat next year?
Good.
Okay, so should we make that clear, or is that not the kind of thing we need to have in
No,
statute?
I don't
Okay.
think it's anything.
Okay.
Again, in multiple counties, you could either be a junior or a senior. In some counties, it just says you can only be a senior. So we looked at just trying to be flexible. Those are specific guidelines and, just like the application process, we can spell that out within the application
And
process.
this may be a question that gets discussed at a subsequent meeting, but I want Braden to know and us to know. So the General Assembly is 90 days, and it'll start in January, and it'll end at the end of March. Let's say this goes through the General Assembly. When does this become effective?
Next school year.
Okay, so that's my question.
Yeah, typically,
So-
most bills passed in the 90-day session at the end of April are either effective June 1 or most commonly October 1.
October 1, okay, gotcha. Well, it would be nice, pretend it doesn't affect you. It would be nice if we could make it June 1 or July 1, since that's when our
Well,
school
law's
board
going
member
to
comes in.
stipulate that, correct?
That would be in the bill.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that something we should ask Delegate Jacob to include in the bill?
I would think that it
Otherwise.
go unsaid because he's writing the bill.
Well, what I'm saying is, otherwise, the
waits
the
till
student,
October.
the student member of the board's first meeting is July 1st, and is that student member going to have to wait until October to?
No.
I wouldn't think that.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, when this becomes effective.
I think the process will dictate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And also, that's just sort of putting the formal stamp on a practice that you.
okay,
All right.
just so I don't want somebody to say they don't know what's going on.
I have a question. Could I, if we all agree on it, could I start giving advisory votes earlier than it's in actual
Yeah,
legislation?
let's.
Or could we talk about that
Yeah,
later?
let's finish this and then we'll get into that.
Okay.
Because I've got an answer for you.
Okay.
But let's just, can we live with this? Is this something that you're okay with handing to Delegate Jacobs to write into a bill and make our student board member a legal, non-voting member of the
I'd
County
rather
Board of
have
Education?
the student board member be a senior than a junior. Just, I think it might.
And
make
I'll
it-
tell you, the reason why we opened it up to juniors and seniors is because we're a small county, and in some cases, we didn't have a senior student that was interested. So that's why, and there are other counties that have juniors and seniors as well. So that's why we included juniors, but certainly that's your purview. And that would be majority vote in terms of where you want to go.
So I'd like to move this forward, and can we codify it by a vote, just so we're on record? Is that cool with everyone? Okay. So who'd like to make the motion?
Okay, can we first define what we're making with the motion, what the recommendation is to?
The motion would be to, well, I'm not going to make the motion because.
I'll make the
Please, go ahead.
motion. The motion is to approve the proposed, Dr. Couch brought to the board, proposed changes to Article 3-801 membership for Kent County, with the idea that this will be brought to Delegate Jay Jacobs, with the understanding that he will introduce it as a bill for the 2023 General Assembly.
We have a motion by Ms. McGee. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Johnson. Any additional comments, questions, concerns?
My only concern is the legislature does get busy, and then
It may not go anywhere.
it may not go anywhere. But again, I'm glad we're doing it. But
So we have a motion and we have a second. Any additional comments or questions?
I just want to say I appreciate the discussion. I think that this was a good discussion, and thank you for sharing the process with us.
Yeah, and I would also like to shout out the former student member of the board, Sam Buckle, for starting this work for me. And hopefully me continuing it, and it hopefully can be continued on for this, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes to move that forward.
So with regard to the ceremonial vote, I had discussion with Mr. Constas about this, and he saw no reason why we couldn't have a ceremonial vote in terms of moving forward with that. Because right now, he's basically a ceremonial member of the board. He's not official, if you will, but he is a ceremonial member of the board. He's like a liaison. So, I mean, it's certainly up to you whether you would like for him to vote on matters that we designate that he could vote on. And it would be noted, as we stated, it would be the board members' vote and then the student member vote listed separately.
I want to say I support that for a number of reasons. I think that there have been many instances in the past where the student board member, and I don't mean just last year, but in previous years, when a student member clearly had an opinion about something, but probably was very reticent to express that because what were they going to do? Just say something and then not be able to follow through with that? So I'm hoping that if we approve this, it gives the student member the understanding that at any time, you can tell us exactly how you feel about something, and don't wait for an invitation for us to say, Mr. Wallace, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's definitely one of the pluses that I was thinking about when we were thinking about the advisory vote for everything. So, yeah.
Again, I agree. Do we have the language?
No, that would be the next thing that I would need to do, is if you agree with that, then at the next board meeting, I would bring recommended changes to the handbook, and we would.
Which would then mean that December, we would vote on it
Right,
for a January 1st start.
right.
Okay.
Can you hold on for another month?
Yeah, I'm very, very okay with that timeline.
Okay, so,
The only question I have is, on every vote, is there going to be a discussion of whether the student member can vote or not? Or is it going to be pretty cut and dried, pretty much understood?
I think we'll have to get used to it, and so it may be that we'll have to make those delineations in terms of what he's available to vote on, if that's the case.
I would just ask that for our getting our training wheels put on and then taken off later, as well as for the public, I think if we can go into board docs and list where we list action item, list in there.
If the student is.
Yeah, if it's a,
That's a
and
good
I don't know,
point.
I don't know if it's board members and, student member of the board, or just board, something that really is
Yeah.
pretty clear.
I could call board docs and they would advise me.
Yeah. I would just like to have that delineation between,
That would also eliminate some awkwardness about.
Yeah, who can vote and
Who can and who can't.
okay,
Well,
What else?
we'll get used to it.
we're gonna, yeah.
We're going to get used to it. So with the idea that I will bring back the handbook and make some changes.
Yeah. Now, was there something else that Dr. Costa brought
Yeah,
up?
I
more
asked
thing, yeah.
about compensation. Is there going to be compensation for the student board member as there is for the adult board members, regular board member?
There was some discussion, and I'll just bring this up, there was some discussion of this at the last Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, and a recommendation was made by Maddie, who is our student member there, that in other school districts, the compensation is in the form of a scholarship. And as far as I know, we have not presented a student member of the board with a scholarship at the end of their term. And I'm all for offering a scholarship to a student member of the board. I
Well-
think that it's a good
We
thing.
we got a letter from the PTSA, from the high school, that said they were willing to fund that.
Which I think is very generous, but I think if we can do it out of our budget and they can continue to use their funds that they've raised to help all of the students at the high school, I would rather they consider that if we can come up with it
How
in our
much?
budget.
What do you guys think
Then
about
we have to have a discussion about what.
Yeah, I
members
think,
do.
I think that's some language we could add to the handbook, something.
That's a budgetary item too, so we'd have
Yeah.
to adjust the budget. So that's going to be, can I bring that to the next board meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any other conversation on student member of the board?
I think this is a good time. I think it was needed. A lot of my friends have served in a student board member capacity and have turned that
Not
into
just your friends, right, Ivy?
have turned that into a career in politics and in service, and it is rewarding to be on the cusp of local government, especially at a time when our local government is very has taken a new interest in American politics and American government. So I'm so excited that we're doing this.
Brady, do you have any other questions?
No, I just want to thank you guys for your consideration and everything that you've done. So thank you for that.
Okay, we're going to move into the second public participation. I just want to read the rules again. Speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes. I will advise with 30 seconds left. Comments about the actions or statements of individual staff members are not appropriate for public comments and should be referred to the superintendent of schools or processed through available channels. If submitting written testimony, speakers are requested to provide a copy to the president. Please remember this is an opportunity for the community to address their comments to the board. It's not an opportunity for dialogue. If you have any questions that need an answer, please contact the superintendent or write a letter to the Board of Education. A response will be sent back to you. Mr. Rhodes, I didn't need to read that. Sorry about that. Yep. I'm just resetting the clock. I'm not starting you yet, so bear with me here. There we go. And
My name is Frank Rhodes, and Dr. Couch and the board, Braden, I appreciate your time. First of all, Mrs. Sullivan, the PTSA is going to raise money, and we are going to give a scholarship. I know you don't want that, but we're going to be able to raise it.
It's not that I don't want it. It's the board can't tell you what to do.
I'm just saying that we're going to work to raise money to give scholarships. And
Fantastic.
last year, they'll give $100 or $200. We'd like to give maybe $1,000 or $2,000, and I know we can raise the money.
I think that's great.
The other thing is, not many people show up to this advisory committee, citizen advisory committee. I've been there only 3 times, so I can't give a great analysis, but there's only been like 2 or 3 people there. And at the last meeting, I'm pretty sure I brought up something about sports, and I also brought up something about the buses. I don't even know if you remember saying that, but the coaches have been telling me they need more buses. So I just want to let you know, it's not coming just from one coach. It's a big issue that we need more buses. So
Could you help
now
us
I
recruit
understand
some
from the
bus
committee,
drivers?
you have to submit a question, okay? So at this forum, we're allowed to speak, but now I guess at your forum, we have to submit a question.
It's not my forum.
Well, whatever, aren't you in charge of it? You
No,
look
I'm-
remember, this
We're
is
co-chairs.
not dialogue, guys.
Not dialogue.
Please,
Okay.
Mr. Rhodes. Thank you.
What I'm
Taking in this
saying
time.
is that I thought you were doing the major talking and everything at that meeting. I think it's not fair for a citizen not to be able to ask a question during that meeting, because you just said, someone just said at the last meeting, we can't do that. I think that's fair. I want to ask questions. I like action right when it happens. I don't want to have to wait a month to come to another meeting and say, this is my question from the last meeting. I don't think that's fair. If a citizen shows up, they should be able to speak. That's my opinion. Also, I hope a lot of you can come to this beautification thing. You mentioned it. We've been working 2 weeks. We got the whole quad, all the trees trimmed. We're going to get the gardens, all the beds redone. None of this stuff hasn't been done for years. We're power washing everything. So I hope you can come and see the work that's happening. It's going to be nice for the homecoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the notification of our next meeting. The next meeting of the Board of Education of Kent County will be held on Monday, November 14th, 2022, beginning at 5:30 p.m. with the open session. Open session will be immediately followed by the board members going into closed session. The open session will resume at 6:30 p.m. This meeting will be located at the administration building in the boardroom, that's this room, located at 5608 Boundary Avenue, Rock Hall, Maryland, 21661. The last item on the agenda is to adjourn. The administration is recommending approval to adjourn the meeting. Do we have a motion to do so?
Move that we adjourn.
Mr. Johnson has the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. McGee. Any further comments, questions, adds, deletions? We'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition?